Prelude. I was in Paris when Parfit, my man, came to me and said that a lady had called to see me. She said, he added, that it was very important. I had formed by then the habit of never seeing people without an appointment. People who call to see you about urgent business are nearly invariably people who wish for financial assistance, the people who are in real need of financial assistance. On the other hand, hardly ever come and ask for it. I asked Parfit what my visitor's name was, and he proffered a card. The card said Catherine Ugubian, a name I had never heard of, and which, frankly, I did not much fancy. I revised my idea that she needed financial assistance and deduced instead that she had something to sell, probably one of those spurious antiques which command a better price when they are brought by hand and forced on the unwilling buyer with the aid of voluble patter. I said I was sorry that I could not see Madame Ugubian, but she could write and state her business. Parfit inclined his head and withdrew. He is very reliable. An invalid, such as I am, needs a reliable attendant, and I had not the slightest doubt that the matter was now disposed of. Much to my astonishment, however, Parfit reappeared. The lady, he said, was very insistent. It was a matter of life and death, and concerned an old friend of mine. Whereupon my curiosity was suddenly aroused. Not by the message. That was a fairly obvious gambit. Life and death and the old friend are the usual counters in the game. No. What stimulated my curiosity was the behavior of Parfit. It was not like Parfit to come back with a message of that kind. I jumped, quite wrongly, to the conclusion that Catherine Ugubian was incredibly beautiful, or, at any rate, unusually attractive. Nothing else, I thought, would explain Parfit's behavior. And since a man is always a man, even if he be 50 and a cripple, I fell into the snare. I wanted to see this radiant creature who could overcome the defenses of the impeccable Parfit. So I told him to bring the lady up, and when Catherine Ugubian entered the room, revulsion of feeling nearly took my breath away. True. I understand Parfit's behavior well enough now. His judgment of human nature is quite unerring. He recognized in Catherine that persistence of temperament against which, in the end, all defenses fall, wisely. He capitulated straight away and saved himself a long and wearying battle. For Catherine Ugubian has the persistence of a sledgehammer and the monotony of an oxyacetylene blowpipe combined with the wearing effect of water dropping on a stone. Time is infinite for her if she wishes to achieve her object. She would have sat determinedly in my entrance hall all day. She is one of those women who have a room in their heads for one idea only, which gives them an enormous advantage over less single-minded individuals. As I say, the shock I got when she entered the room was tremendous. I was all keyed up to behold beauty. Instead, the woman who entered was monumentally, almost awe-inspiringly, plain, not ugly. Mark you, ugliness has its own rhythm, its own mode of attack. But Catherine had a large flat face like a pancake, a kind of desert of a face. Her mouth was wide and had a very slight mustache on its upper lip. Her eyes were small and dark and made one think of inferior currants in an inferior bun. Her hair was abundant, ill-confined, and preeminently greasy. Her figure was so nondescript that it was practically not a figure at all. Her clothes covered her adequately, and fitted her nowhere. She appeared neither destitute nor opulent. She had a determined jaw and, as I heard when she opened her mouth, a harsh and unlovely voice. I threw a glance of deep reproach at Parfit, who met it imperturbably. He was clearly of the opinion that, as usual, he knew best. "Madame Yugubian, sir," he said, and retired, shutting the door and leaving me at the mercy of this determined-looking female. Catherine advanced upon me purposefully. I had never felt so helpless, so conscious of my crippled state. This was a woman from whom it would be advisable to run away, and I could not run. She spoke in a loud, firm voice. "Please, if you will be so good, you must come with me. Please." It was less of a request than a command. "I beg your pardon," I said, startled. "I do not speak the English too good. I am afraid. But there is not time to lose. No, no time at all. It is to Mr. Gabriel. I ask you to come. He is very ill. Soon, very soon, he dies, and he has asked for you. So to see him you must come at once." I stared at her. Frankly, I thought she was crazy. The name Gabriel made no impression upon me at all. Partly, I dare say, because of her pronunciation. It did not sound in the least like Gabriel, but even if it had sounded like it, I do not think that it would have stirred a chord. It was all so long ago. It must have been 10 years since I had even thought of John Gabriel. You say someone is dying. Someone, that I know. She cast at me a look of infinite reproach. But yes, you know him. You know him well, and he asks for you. She was so positive that I began to rack my brains. What name had she said? Gable Galbraith. I had known a Galbraith, a mining engineer, only casually. It is true. It seemed in the highest degree unlikely that he should ask to see me on his deathbed. Yet it is a tribute to Catherine's force of character that I did not doubt for a moment the truth of her statement. "What name did you say?" I asked. "Galbraith? No, no. Gabriel. Gabriel." I stared. This time, I got the word right, but it only conjured up a mental vision of the angel Gabriel with a large pair of wings. The vision fitted in well enough with Catherine Yugubian. She had a resemblance to the type of earnest woman usually to be found kneeling in the extreme left-hand corner of an early Italian primitive. She had that peculiar simplicity of feature combined with the look of ardent devotion. She added, persistently, doggedly, "John Gabriel," and I got it. It all came back to me. I felt giddy and slightly sick. St. Lou, and the old ladies, and Millie Burt, and John Gabriel, with his ugly, dynamic little face, rocking gently back on his heels, and Rupert, tall and handsome, like a young god, and, of course, Isabella. I remembered the last time I had seen John Gabriel in Zagrade and what had happened there, and I felt rising in me a surging red tide of anger and loathing. "So he's dying, is he?" I asked savagely. "I'm delighted to hear it. Pardon, there are things that you cannot very well repeat when someone says, 'Pardon,' politely to you." Catherine Yugubian looked utterly uncomprehending. I merely said, "You say he is dying. Yes, he is in pain, in terrible pain." Well, I was delighted to hear that, too. No pain that John Gabriel could suffer would atone for what he had done. But I felt unable to face with one who was evidently John Gabriel's devoted worshiper. What was there about the fellow? I wondered irritably. That always made women fall for him. He was ugly as sin. He was pretentious, vulgar, boastful. He had brains of a kind, and he was, in certain circumstances, low circumstances, good company. He had humor. But none of these are really characteristics that appeal to women very much. Catherine broke in upon my thoughts. You will come. Please, you will come quickly. There is no time to lose. I pulled myself together. I'm sorry, my dear lady, I said, but I'm afraid I cannot accompany you. But he asks for you. She persisted. I'm not coming, I said. You do not understand, said Catherine. He is ill. He is dying, and he asks for you. I braced myself for the fight. I had already begun to realize what Parfit had realized at the first glance, that Catherine Ugubion did not give up easily. You are making a mistake, I said. John Gabriel is not a friend of mine. She nodded her head vigorously. But yes, he read your name in the paper. It say, you are here as a member of the commission. And he say, I am to find out where you live and to get you to come. And please, you must come quick, very quick, for the doctor say very soon now. So will you come at once? Please. It seemed to me that I had got to be frank. I said, he may rot in hell for all I care. Miss, pardon? She looked at me anxiously, wrinkling her long nose, amiable, trying to understand. John Gabriel, I said slowly and clearly, is not a friend of mine. He is a man I hate. Now do you understand? She blinked. It seemed to me that at last she was beginning to get there. You say, she said it slowly, like a child repeating a difficult lesson. You say that. You hate John Gabriel. Is that what you say? Please. That's right, I said. She smiled, a maddening smile. No. She said indulgently, that is not possible. No one could hate John Gabriel. He is very great, very good man. All of us who know him, we die for him gladly. Good God, I cried, exasperated. What's the man ever done that people should feel like that about him? Well, I had asked for it. She forgot the urgency of her mission. She sat down. She pushed back a loop of greasy hair from her forehead. Her eyes shone with enthusiasm. She opened her mouth, and words poured from her. She spoke, I think, for about a quarter of an hour. Sometimes she was incomprehensible, stumbling with the difficulties of the spoken word. Sometimes her words flowed in a clear stream. But the whole performance had the effect of a great epic. She spoke with reverence, with awe, with humility, with worship. She spoke of John Gabriel as one speaks of a Messiah, and that clearly was what he was to her. She said things of him that to me seemed wildly fantastic and wholly impossible. She spoke of a man tender, brave, and strong, a leader and a succorer. She spoke of one who risked death that others might live, of one who hated cruelty and injustice with a white and burning flame. He was to her a prophet, a king, a savior, one who could give to people courage that they did not know they had, and strength that they did not know they possessed. He had been tortured more than once, crippled, half killed, but somehow his maimed body had overcome its disabilities by sheer willpower, and he had continued to perform the impossible. You do not know. You say what he has done, she ended. But everyone knows Father Clement. Everyone. I stared, for what she said was true. Everyone has heard of Father Clement. His is a name to conjure with. Even if some people hold that it is only a name, a myth, and that the real man has never existed, how shall I describe the legend of Father Clement? Imagine a mixture of Richard Coeur de Lion and Father Damien and Lawrence of Arabia, a man at once a fighter and a saint, and with the adventurous recklessness of a boy. In the years that had succeeded the war of 1939 to 45, Europe and the East had undergone a black period. Fear had been in the ascendant, and fear had bred its new crop of cruelties and savageries. Civilization had begun to crack. In India and Persia, abominable things had happened. Wholesale massacres, famines, tortures, anarchy, and through the black mist, a figure, an almost legendary figure, had appeared. The man calling himself Father Clement, saving children, rescuing people from torture, leading his flock by impassable ways over mountains, bringing them to safe zones, settling them in communities, worshipped, loved, adored, a legend, not a man. And according to Catherine Ugubian, Father Clement was John Gabriel, former MP for St. Louis, womanizer, drunkard, the man who first, last, and all the time played for his own hand, an adventurer, an opportunist, a man with no virtues save the virtue of physical courage. Suddenly, uneasily, my incredulity wavered. Impossible as I believed Catherine's tale to be, there was one point of plausibility. Both Father Clement and John Gabriel were men of unusual physical courage. Some of those exploits of the legendary figure, the audacity of the rescues, the sheer bluff, the impudence of his methods, were John Gabriel's methods all right. But John Gabriel had always been a self-advertiser. Everything he did with an eye on the gallery. If John Gabriel was Father Clement, the whole world would surely have been advised of the fact. No, I couldn't believe. But when Catherine stopped breathless, when the fire in her eyes died down, when she said in her old persistent, monotonous manner, "You will come now. Yes, please," I shouted for Parfit. He helped me up and gave me my crutches and assisted me down the stairs and into a taxi, and Catherine got in beside me. I had to know. You see, curiosity, perhaps, or the persistence of Catherine Ugubian. I should certainly have had to give way to her in the end. Anyway, I wanted to see John Gabriel. I wanted to see if I could reconcile the Father Clement story with what I knew of the John Gabriel of St. Louis. I wanted, perhaps, to see if I could see what Isabella had seen, what she must have seen to have done as she had done. I don't know what I expected as I followed Catherine Ugubian up the narrow stairs and into the little back bedroom. There was a French doctor there, with a beard and a pontifical manner. He was bending over his patient, but he drew back and motioned me forward courteously. I noticed his eyes appraising me curiously. I was the person that a great man, dying, had expressed a wish to see. I had a shock when I saw Gabriel. It was so long since that day in Zagreb. I would not have recognized the figure that lay so quietly on the bed. He was dying. I saw that. The end was very near now, and it seemed to me that I recognized nothing I knew in the face of the man lying there. For I had to acknowledge that, as far as appearances went, Catherine had been right. That emaciated face was the face of a saint. It had the marks of suffering, of agony. It had the asceticism. And it had, finally, the spiritual peace. And none of these qualities had anything to do with the man whom I had known as John Gabriel. Then he opened his eyes and saw me, and he grinned. It was the same grin, the same eyes, beautiful eyes in a small, ugly clown's face. His voice was very weak. He said, "So she got you. Armenians are wonderful." Yes, it was John Gabriel. He motioned to the doctor. He demanded in his weak, suffering, imperious voice. A promised stimulant, the doctor demurred. Gabriel Avov bore him. It would hasten the end. Or so I guessed. But Gabriel made it clear that a last spurt of energy was important and indeed necessary to him. The doctor shrugged his shoulders and gave in. He administered the injection, and then he and Catherine left me alone with the patient. Gabriel began at once. "I want you to know about Isabella's death." I told him that I knew all about that. "No," he said, "I don't think you do." It was then that he described to me that final scene in the cafe in Zagreb. I shall tell it in its proper place. After that, he only said one thing more. It is because of that one thing more that I am writing this story. Father Clement belongs to history. His incredible life of heroism, endurance, compassion, and courage belongs to those people who like writing the lives of heroes. The communities he started are the foundation of our new tentative experiments in living. And there will be many biographies of the man who imagined and created them. This is not the story of Father Clement. It is the story of John Meriwether Gabriel, a VC in the war, an opportunist, a man of sensual passions and of great personal charm. He and I, in our different way, loved the same woman. We all start out as the central figure of our own story. Later we wonder, doubt, get confused. So it has been with me. First it was my story. Then I thought it was Jennifer and I together, Romeo and Juliet, Tristan and Isolde. And then, in my darkness and disillusionment, Isabella sailed across my vision like the moon on a dark night. She became the central theme of the embroidery, and I was the cross-stitch background. No more. No more, but also no less. For without the drab background, the pattern will not stand out. Now, again, the pattern has shifted. This is not my story, not Isabella's story. It is the story of John Gabriel. The story ends here, where I am beginning it. It ends with John Gabriel. But it also begins here. Chapter 1. The truth was ugly, and it had your face on it. You used to believe in people. That was your first mistake. You thought John Gabriel was a brute with vision, a man who crawled out of the gutter with fists full of fire and eyes full of storm. You thought Isabel was the porcelain saint trapped in a hollow marriage, desperate to breathe, You thought wrong. Now the ceiling above your bed, your prison, your altar, your universe offers no comfort. Its cracks run like fault lines in your memory, splitting apart every kind word, every noble gesture you ever imagined in them. John Gabriel didn't fall. He descended deliberately, smiling, hand in hand with the devil and Isabel. She didn't need saving. She orchestrated the rescue, handed him the ladder, and pulled the strings. The hero was a myth. The damsel was a shadow. And you were the cripple in the tower, watching a puppet show and calling it life. You stare out the window now. October rains streak the glass like tears you never cried. Outside, the town rolls on indifferent, mud-colored, soaked in routine and rust. No one knows you're unraveling. No one cares. Until the phone rings, not loudly, not sharply, just enough to stir the rot beneath your ribs. It's the kind of ring that smells of damp newspapers and secrets never meant to survive daylight. Benji Kasarayan, you answer, a voice, low and male, smoky, unhurried. Isabel Linden is missing. Your fingers twitch. What? She boarded a train from London yesterday, never arrived. Husband's frantic. Cops think she ran away. But someone left a message with your name on it. A pause. You can hear him breathing. The voice returns, colder this time. Do you still believe in her, Mr. Norreys? You hang up without answering, but it's too late, because now you're remembering the way she touched the edge of your hand that last night, the way her smile curled like a question she never asked, the way John Gabriel looked at you not with contempt, but pity. You told yourself you were only an observer, but maybe you were always the beginning of the end. Chapter 2. A missing woman is never just missing you. Lie still. Not from shock. You're used to betrayal by now. It sits in your chest like an old paperweight. Heavy, but familiar. No. You lie still because you know the moment you move, you become involved. And Hugh Norreys swore never to get involved again. But then again, they always pull you back, don't they? Especially her. Isabel Linden wasn't supposed to disappear. Women like her don't vanish. They glide out of rooms in silk, leaving perfume and regret behind. But when they do vanish, it's never clean, never silent, and someone always pays the bill. You reach for the envelope on your nightstand, yellowing at the edges. The last letter she wrote you unsigned, almost incoherent. You've read it 100 times. Still, tonight, it reads differently. He isn't who you think, nor am I. If something happens, don't believe the story they tell you. Cryptic, melodramatic, desperate, or a setup. The town has changed. You can feel it. There's a new chill under the paint. And the silence has teeth. You notice the newspaper left by your nurse. Bottom right corner, half folded. Socialite missing lady. Isabel Linden vanishes from train. Husband says she wouldn't do this. Local man contacted by anonymous caller. That's you, the local man. An afterthought with a spine full of pins and a past full of ghosts. You buzz the nurse. She's not happy. She never is when you make her earn her keep. But she brings the phone to your lap and props up the pillow behind your neck. You dial with shaky fingers. Not her husband. Not the police. You call John Gabriel. It rings 3 times. And then you hear it. His voice, calm, measured, as though he's been expecting this call. Hugh, he says, I wondered when you'd come crawling back into the mess. You don't speak. He laughs short, humorless. She's not missing. You know, she's just out of reach. Click. The line goes dead. Your hand trembles, but your eyes don't blink. Because now, more than ever, you know this isn't about a missing woman. This is about the last lie you told yourself, that you weren't part of the story. Chapter 3. The Lie Beneath the Charm. You spend the night half awake, not because of pain, though the ache in your legs never really leaves, but because of her voice. Not in your ears, but in your bones. Whispered warnings, tangled in cigarette smoke and silk dresses. Isabel wasn't a fool. She knew what kind of man John Gabriel was. That's what made her dangerous. By morning, the town is buzzing. Gossip clings to the streets like morning mist. The nurse tries to shield you from it. But you read between her quiet clatters and side-eyed glances, everyone's wondering the same thing. Why would the golden girl run? Or worse, who made her run? You dictate a note to the nurse. Polite, crisp. Addressed to Colonel Whitaker. A man who sees in black and white, but misses all the blood smeared in between. He was always too upright to be of real use, but useful enough when you need to stir still waters. By noon, the colonel arrives. He's aged, more mustache than man now, but his handshake is still firm, and he smells of dust and disapproval. I expected your note, he says, seating himself stiffly. You think she's truly missing. You don't answer right away. Instead, you tap the letter on your lap. Isabel's letter. The one she sent before the silence. He reads it, his brow tightening. She was frightened. You say, or manipulative. He counters. Both of you know she was capable of being both. He leans forward. What are you suggesting? Hugh, I'm not suggesting anything. You say, voice level. But if she's vanished, and John Gabriel's still walking free, then I'm not going to sit here and knit. The colonel winces at your crudeness, but he nods. There are whispers, he mutters, about Gabriel, about his campaign, about a debt. And a woman with red gloves. That's new. Red gloves. You file it away. When he leaves, the room feels colder. You turn to the window, watching the empty street below. You remember something she once said, laughing softly against your shoulder on a night that smelled of lilacs and gin. Power is just the prettiest mask for fear. And John Gabriel wears it well? But something's wrong this time. Off rhythm. Unpracticed. He's too quiet, and she's too smart to disappear without a scream. You ring the phone again, not for him. This time, it's for someone who owes you. Someone who used to follow shadows for a living before retiring into obscurity, an ex-journalist named Warren, who got burned chasing a cabinet scandal. He picks up after one ring. I'm looking into someone. You say, or maybe something. Silence. Then, Isabel Linden. Of course he already knows. And of course he says yes. But before hanging up, he asks a question you've been avoiding. Do you think she's still alive? You pause, then whisper the only answer that feels true. I think she wants us to believe she isn't. Chapter 4. The Disappearance of Isabel Linden. You sleep restlessly. haunted not by dreams, but by details. A red glove on a banister, a pale envelope with no postmark, the taste of copper in your mouth when you remember how she used to say your name not lovingly, but with the weight of finality, like a full stop. By mid-morning, Warren calls back. His voice is low, the kind people use when they've just seen something they shouldn't have. She didn't board the 6:45 from Winsley, like the paper says. You grip the phone tighter. How do you know? Because I spoke to the porter, who swore she never got off the platform. She could have slipped away. She was seen in a car, not hers. And the driver was wearing gloves. Red ones. That again? Red gloves. They're not fashion anymore. They're a threat. You hang up and stare at the fireplace. Someone's staging a vanishing act. But the misdirection is too messy. Sloppy. Almost like they want to be found out, but only by the right person. You look again at the envelope Isabel left for you. You never opened it. Not really. Inside. Only a single line scribbled in her distinct slant. You once told me, lies are just truths we don't like. Below it, nothing. But it's not a farewell, it's bait. You think about where she might go. Not where she should go. And it hits you. There was a cottage on the coast. A place she once described as where the world forgets itself. Her father left it to her, and she never sold it. You call in a favor from a taxi firm you used to use back when people still cared what you wrote. No name, just a location. Paid in advance. You tell them to send someone discreet. The driver's younger than expected. Pale, silent. You sit in the back as the town shrinks behind you and the fog swallows the road. 3 hours later, you're standing in front of the crumbling gate of Seward House. Rusted hinges, salt-worn steps, curtains drawn. The silence here is deeper than any hospital ward. You knock. Once, twice. Then the door creaks open. And she's there, not surprised. Not frightened, just tired. Her voice cracks. I thought you'd take longer. You step inside. It smells like old books and something burnt. On the table, a newspaper lies open. Gabriel's face stares back from the headlines. Political triumph or personal tragedy. She follows your gaze and says quietly, I think I broke him, or he broke me. Either way, it's done. You sit across from her. The air between you is loaded with everything unspoken. Why now, you ask? She lights a cigarette with shaking fingers. Because I couldn't watch him win again. Did you kill him? She laughs, sharp and bitter. I didn't have to. You don't ask what that means. Not yet. Because something else is bothering you. Something's off in her expression. In the quiet way, her eyes flick to the hallway, as though waiting for a sound that hasn't come. Is someone else here, you ask? She doesn't answer, but she doesn't deny it either. You rise slowly, step toward the hall, and just as you reach it, a sound, a faint cough, childlike, then silence. You turn back. Isabel's already crying, not from fear, but from the weight of a truth she can't keep hidden much longer. Chapter 5. The truth behind the door. You freeze in the hallway, the kind of stillness that isn't caution, but calculation. The cough short, involuntary, unmistakably young. You turn your head slowly. Isabel isn't looking at you. She's staring at her own hands, as though they belong to someone else. You speak her name once. She doesn't respond. So you walk down the creaking hallway with its sea-damp wallpaper and dust-thick floorboards until you reach the last door on the left. White paint flaking, the brass knob slightly warm. You open it, and inside a child, maybe 5, curled up in an armchair too large for him. A book open in his lap. eyes wide, frightened, but not surprised. Children never are. They know things before we tell them. He doesn't cry, doesn't ask who you are, just says, "Are you the one who writes the stories?" You nod slowly. "Behind you." Isabel's voice trembles. "His name is Elliot." You say nothing, because there are too many questions for a name to answer. Elliot stares at you. "He said you'd come," he whispers. "Who did?" "My father." A pause. You feel the temperature in the room shift, like someone just opened a door to the past and left it ajar. You turn back to Isabel. She's in the doorway now, still clutching her cigarette, burned down to the filter. Her eyes are wet but hard, a cocktail of regret and defiance. "I told no one," she says, "not even him." Not until it was too late. "Elliot is Gabriel's, you ask?" She nods. "And he never knew," he guessed. "But by then, I had already disappeared. I thought it would be safer for both of them. But he found you." "Yes," she says, "a year ago. He begged me to stay silent. Said his career couldn't survive a scandal. Said it would all be over soon. That he just needed time. And now he's dead," she says flatly. "And everything we buried is surfacing." You study her, the way her shoulders slope, the way her hands tremble now that they've stopped pretending to be strong. "I wasn't going to tell anyone," she says. But Elliot started asking questions. About fathers, about names. I couldn't lie anymore. You look at the boy again. He watches you like a mirror, trying to see who you are beneath the quiet. He deserves more than secrets. You say, Isabel nods, "But it's not agreement. It's surrender. I need to know." You say, voice low, "Did Gabriel die by accident?" "No." "Did you kill him?" "No," she says again, just as quiet. "Then who did?" She doesn't answer, but Elliot does. "Copies?" In that childlike way that cuts through the noise. "There was a man. He came one night when Mummy was asleep. He stood outside. I saw him through the curtain." "Did you see his face?" You ask gently. He nods and names someone you never expected, a name you've written about before, a name that doesn't belong in this house, or with this woman, or with this story. But now it does, and everything changes. Ooh. Chapter 6. The name you wrote before. The name echoes in your mind like a bell you didn't know was tolling. You kneel in front of the boy. "Elliot, are you sure?" He nods solemnly, as if this question is too important to answer with anything less than truth. "He was standing by the gate. I saw him when the wind blew the curtain." You say the name aloud now, slowly, testing it. "Edward Halcombe." Isabel gasps. The cigarette falls from her hand, extinguishing itself in a dead curl of smoke on the wood floor. "You knew him?" you ask. She backs into the doorframe. Her voice is dry, as if she's been denying this part of the truth for so long it calcified in her throat. "Years ago," she says, "before Gabriel." You stand, the room suddenly too small. You never mentioned it, because it didn't matter. He was nothing. He was the man who blackmailed Gabriel 5 years ago. The man who leaked the parliamentary scandal to the papers. The man who disappeared quietly, conveniently, before the inquiry could touch him. You walk past her into the hall, your pulse climbing. "Why would he come back now?" you murmur. "Behind you," Isabel whispers. "Because Gabriel took everything from him. His future, his money, his silence." You turn, and Elliot, her face crumples. "I never thought he'd go that far." There's a long silence. Then the creak of small footsteps. Elliot steps into the hall, holding something, a crumpled piece of paper. He hands it to you. You unfold it carefully. It's a torn page from a manuscript you recognize. One of yours. A short story, published in a forgotten literary journal years ago. A story only a handful of people ever read. On it, a sentence is underlined in thick pencil. The past doesn't disappear. It waits behind closed doors and knocks louder each time you ignore it. Beneath it, in block letters, you know why. Stop writing. E.H. You stare at the page, your breath catching. This wasn't just a threat. It was a warning. And a challenge. Isabel is pale now. He knew your work. He said once you were dangerous with a pen, that you remembered everything. He's right. You say, and now I remember him. The hallway is silent, but the silence feels full, like a stage before the lights go up. Giyasaiya. Because Edward Halcombe was never content with being forgotten. He wanted an audience. And now, you're back in the front row. Chapter 7. The Man Who Wasn't There. You sit at your desk. The note Elliot handed you spread before you like a relic unearthed from a tomb. The words glare at you, and so does the signature E.A. Edward Halcombe. You thought he'd vanished, died, fled the country, but instead, it seems he's been watching, waiting for the right moment to return. Isabel hovers behind you, arms folded tight against her chest like she's holding in decades of confession. Outside, the wind howls and shakes the windows. Inside, the silence between you crackles like old vinyl. You glance at her. Where did you meet him? She flinches, then answers without looking at you. A party. Political fundraiser. He was clever, cruel, dangerous, but charming. You raise an eyebrow. The kind of man Gabriel hated. The kind of man Gabriel used, she says quietly. Until he couldn't anymore. You turn the note over. There's something familiar in the handwriting. The tight slant. The almost surgical precision. It hits you like a flashbulb. A letter you received years ago, after your second book was published. An anonymous admirer who quoted that same line from your story. You dig through the drawer, fingers shaking. It's still there, creased and yellowing. You place it side by side with Elliot's torn page. Identical script. He's been watching me since before Gabriel's scandal. You whisper. Isabel clutches the back of the chair. What does he want? You look up at her, your voice grim, to be written back into the story. Later that night, after Elliot's asleep and Isabel's locked herself in the guest room with half a bottle of wine, you return to your study. You open your laptop. The manuscript you've been working on, your fictionalized account of the scandal, the suicides. The betrayal is still on the screen. You scroll to the final paragraph. Your cursor blinks like a warning. You type a new line. Chapter 1. The Man Who Wasn't There. Then you save the file under a different name, and not for publication, not yet, but as bait, because if Edward Halcombe is watching, reading, listening, he'll know the story has started again. And this time, you're writing it with him in mind. Chapter 8. The House with No Shadows. Morning crawls over the hills like a thief. Gray light bleeds through the curtains. You haven't slept. You haven't even changed your clothes. But your instincts are alive again, snapping like taut wire under pressure. You drive east, past the edge of town, where the GPS signal dies and the map becomes memory. The last address you have for Edward Halcombe is a house that technically no longer exists, sold, leveled, subdivided. But rumors are sturdier than walls, and one whispers that the house was never torn down, just moved. You find it nestled in a dip behind a line of skeletal birch trees. A Victorian skeleton smothered in ivy. The mailbox is blank. The curtains are drawn. No sign of life. You step out of the car, and your foot sinks into wet earth. The air feels charged static clinging to your skin. You knock. Silence. Then the door creaks open on its own. You hesitate. No crime scene tape, no padlock, no sign of abandonment either. Just dust. And waiting. You step inside. The hall smells like old books and lost time. Faded portraits line the wall faces with their eyes scratched out. You half expect them to turn and look at you. A clock ticks. You follow the sound into the study. It's immaculate. A desk, a chair, a typewriter, black and gleaming like a weapon. And on the wall, pinned to a corkboard, pages from your own book. Not your manuscript, your published work. Highlighted, annotated, underlined, in red. One word stands out, circled again and again. Reversal. You hear a click behind you. Turn. A man stands in the doorway. Tall, lean, gray at the temples. But the eyes, they're wrong. Too amused. Too calm. He smiles. You made it. You stare. He offers a hand. Edward Halcombe. Or whatever name you've given me on the page. You don't take it. Instead, you ask, why now? He shrugs. Because you are finally ready to see the ending for what it really is. You narrow your eyes. And what's that? He leans closer. An origin story. You leave an hour later with nothing but questions and the faint scent of tobacco clinging to your coat. He gave you nothing concrete, just riddles, just threats wrapped in metaphor. But you saw something behind him on the desk, an old passport, and a photo, creased and torn, of Gabriel lying in a hospital bed. You didn't know such a photo existed. He knows something. He wants you to dig. And now, you will. Not for the book. Not for the public. This is personal now. Chapter 9. The First Confession. You don't call the police. You don't tell your editor. You don't even tell your therapist. Though her voice echoes in your head, what are you trying not to say? You drive instead. South. Fast. Toward the hospital, Gabriel was taken to St. Cyril's. You haven't been there in years, but you remember the corridors, the way they always smelled, faintly of antiseptic, and something worse, despair, wrapped in bleach. At the front desk, you flash your press badge, an expired one. But no one looks too closely. You're ushered into records. The nurse on duty is old school. Tight bun. Tighter mouth. There's no file under Gabriel Holtz. You lean in, drop your voice. Try under Edward Halcombe, or maybe under both. Circa 6 years ago, ICU. She narrows her eyes but types, and then freezes. A beat, 2, 3. Finally, there's something, but it's sealed. You nod slowly. I don't need the file. Just tell me, did he survive? She hesitates. Then, yes. But he didn't walk out of here the same. You leave the hospital and sit in your car. Engine off, world muted. So he did survive. That's something the public never knew. Your book never knew. So why pretend he was dead? Unless the truth was more dangerous than the lie. Your phone buzzes. Unknown number. You hesitate, then answer. A voice low and deliberate. They warned you off. You say nothing. They were right. So, you still say nothing. The line goes dead. Later that night, you're in a motel 2 counties away. You can't go home. Not yet. You don't trust your locks anymore. You open your laptop. Pull up your original manuscript. There's a chapter that never made it into print. One your publisher asked you to cut. Gabriel's last words. You'd thought they were too cryptic, too fragmented. But now, they sound like code. You reread them. She didn't scream. That's what I remember. Just looked at me. Like she knew. Like she chose it. That's worse than guilt. You know, being trusted. You freeze. Who was she? It wasn't his girlfriend. You interviewed her. Not his mother. She was already dead. Then who? Your mind rewinds. Flashes. The group photo from the university years. The one Gabriel tore in half before the trial. You never found the missing piece. But maybe Edward has it. Or maybe he is the missing piece. One last thing before you sleep, if you can sleep. You write down a name, one you haven't said aloud since the trial. Miranda Karras, the girl who vanished before Gabriel's arrest. Though, not a victim, not a suspect, just gone. Maybe she was the first, maybe she was the key, and maybe, just maybe, she's still watching you. Chapter 10. Her eyes were never on you. You wake to tapping, not at the door, at the window, 3rd floor. You hold your breath. The sound stops. When you finally work up the nerve to pull back the curtain, there's nothing there. Just a smudge on the glass. 5 small prints. Like someone pressed their fingertips there and waited. You don't call the front desk. You know what they'll say. No cameras. No visitors. You know what you'll say. Nothing. The morning brings silence. Stillness. As if the air itself is holding back a secret. You drive back toward the city, but you don't go home. You go to the archives. The real archives. University records. Buried in the basement of an administrative building no one cares about anymore. It takes hours, but eventually, you find it. A record of Miranda Karras, art major, 2nd year, dorm A22, last signed in 9:17 p.m. on October 12th. Never signed out. Her file ends there. No withdrawal, no death, no forwarding address, just gone. You flip the page, and a photocopy of her student ID is stapled to the back. And for the first time, you realize something you never caught before. You've seen her face, not in a file, in a courtroom sketch. One of the jurors, you leave the archives shaken. You double-check the plate on your car. No tracking devices. You turn your phone off. You drive with one eye on the rearview mirror. Because if Miranda was on the jury, then she helped decide Gabriel's guilt. And if she vanished before the trial, who the hell was that woman? Back in your apartment locked, bolted, double-barred. You finally pull out the envelope Gabriel mailed to himself, the one no one ever opened. Because it was evidence, because it was sealed, because it was easy to forget. You slice the edge open with a scalpel, not a letter opener. Inside, one Polaroid. And one sentence, the photo is grainy, but you recognize the setting. A classroom, 5 students. Gabriel is at the center, but it's the girl on the left that chills you, because she's looking at the camera not with fear, not with joy, with knowledge. Like she knew what the photo would become. You flip the photo over in messy ink. She asked me to do it, but not that way. And underneath, in a different hand, she lied to all of us, even you. You sit in the silence, feeling the weight of every missing page. Someone rewrote the truth before you ever typed it. Now you're starting to see who held the pen. Chapter 11. The Girl Who Wasn't You. Reread the message again. She asked me to do it, but not that way. She lied to all of us, even you. The words don't change, but the meaning deepens with every glance. This wasn't just guilt. It was betrayal, and not just Gabriel's. Yours, you scan the Polaroid into your laptop, enhance the image, run it through facial recognition because paranoia is now your oxygen. Match found. 2. Actually, one named Sophie Lark, one alias Evans. You sit back, every hair on your body stiffening like antennae. The last words the dead man on the cliff ever spoke. Why didn't they ask Evans? You always thought Evans was a man, a bystander, but Evans was a mask. And Sophie Lark wore it better than anyone. You dig deeper. Sophie Lark disappeared 6 months before the trial, officially. But your gut says she never left. She was hiding in plain sight. One of the jurors, one of the classmates, one of you. You check trial transcripts, jury records. Juror number 7, female. Late 20s, listed as Sarah Duvall. You compare the ID photo. It's Sophie. Wig, glasses, new name. Same eyes. And now, everything you thought was clean starts to smear. The verdict, the testimony, the whispered doubts no one chased. Sophie made sure Gabriel was found guilty. And then she vanished again. You go back to the wall, the timeline, pushpin after pushpin, connected with red thread and decaying trust. At the center now isn't Gabriel, isn't even you. It's her, Sophie Evans. Sarah, whatever her real name is. You thought you were the detective in this story. You were just a witness. And maybe not even that. You need a name, a lead. So you call the one person you swore you'd never contact again. Your former professor, Ellen Voss. She answers on the third ring, still poking dead wasps' nests. Are we? She says dryly. I need your files. From the 2018 seminar. The one with Gabriel Ryan. And Miranda Karras. Silence. Then, you're too late. Someone already took them. Your heart stops. Who? I didn't see. But they wore gloves. That night, you leave your lights on, double bolt the door, and fall asleep, gripping the Polaroid in one hand and a letter opener in the other. Because whoever Sophie is, she's not done writing. Not by a long shot. Chapter 12. The Whisper Network. You wake to silence. Not the comforting kind, but the kind that listens back. The Polaroid still in your hand, the letter opener on the floor. Someone had been here, not last night, years ago, and they had started something you were only now catching up to. You pull up the archived group photo from the University Debate Team, 2018. Center row, Miranda Karras. Back a row, Gabriel Ryan. Left edge, half shadowed, juror number 7, Sophie Sarah Evans. The caption underneath reads, Truth is a practice, not a possession. It's signed E.V. Evans. You zoom in. The handwriting matches the note you found in the hollow book behind your wall. This wasn't an alias. It was a doctrine. Evans wasn't just a name. It was a movement. You make a list. First, the known. Gabriel was framed, or played. Miranda lied on the stand. Juror number 7 was an infiltrator. Evans, Sophie, Sarah, yes, unknown operator. The unknown. What Evans wanted. Why the verdict had to be guilty. Why everyone involved is suddenly silent or dead. You call Miranda. Voicemail again. But this time, you don't hang up. You say, I know who Evans is now. I know what you all did. And if you don't call me back, I'll let the world know too. You don't expect a response. But 5 minutes later, your phone buzzes. Blocked number. You answer. A pause. Then her voice. You think you're ready, but you're not. You grip the phone tighter. Try me. You want the truth, she says. Then go to the West Library. Basement. Room B7. The line clicks dead. The West Library is closed on Sundays. But that never stopped anyone committed to secrets. You sneak in through the side fire exit wedged open with chewing gum. Inside, the air is different. Cold, archival, whisper thick. You descend the concrete stairs to the basement. No cameras, only stacks of forgotten academia and things too dangerous to burn. Room B7 is unmarked. You pry it open. Dust swirls. Inside is a table, a single folder, labeled the Evans record. You open it. Inside are photos of you at protests, at the trial, in your apartment, sleeping. One taken from inside your closet, and a note, handwritten in red ink. You're not the detective. You're the replacement. You step back, then freeze. A soft click behind you. Door locked. Someone just turned out the lights. And whoever it is, they've been expecting you. Chapter 13. The room with no echo. You don't scream. You've learned better than that, because in this room, there's no echo, no bounce, no reply. You're sealed inside a silence engineered to devour sound. You drop to a crouch instinctively. The folder is still in your hand. The photo's proof of surveillance. The red ink proof of warning. You're the replacement. The words bounce around your skull. Were you meant to fill a role? Finish someone else's work? Or take someone else's fall? You reach for your phone. No signal. Of course not. You scan the dark, looking for sensors, lenses, anything. And that's when you see it. Not a camera, a mirror, but wrong, not mounted, freestanding, framed in black wood and cracked just barely at the center. You approach it. There's something behind it, a shimmer, a glow. You touch the edge of the frame. It slides. A door, another door. Behind it, a staircase, leading downward, even deeper. This was never about a verdict. It was never about justice. It was about layers. Of lies, of roles, of watchers and watched. You descend, step by step. The air changes. Smells metallic now, cold. You reach a second room. No furniture, no cameras. Just a single typewriter in the middle of the floor. A light above it flickers. You approach. On the typewriter's paper. Juror number 8's testimony fake. Juror number 4 compromised. Gabriel's guilt manufactured. The truth still buried. And below that, your name, typed in full. You were never outside the case. You were the case. You turn footsteps. Someone is coming. You press yourself against the wall. Folder clutched tight. From the stairwell, a woman, not Miranda, older, sharper, gray coat, gloves, calm. She sees you, smiles. You found it, she says. Her voice is smooth, controlled, terrifying. You whisper, who are you? She steps closer. I'm what happens when justice becomes inconvenient. You You stare at her. You're Evans? No, she replies. Evans is an idea. I'm just the archivist. She lifts a hand revealing a key, drops it on the floor between you. You can unlock the next room, she says. Or you can leave with what you know. What's in the next room? Everything you're not supposed to know. And one thing that'll destroy you. She turns and disappears into shadow. You stand frozen, key in hand, the typewriter behind you still warm, the echo of truth closer than ever. And now, for the first time, you have a choice. Do you turn the key or walk away? Chapter 14. The Lock That Remembers. You stare at the key in your hand. Cool, smooth, too light to feel real. You don't move because you know doors like this don't open forward. They open inward. You glance once more at the typewriter. Your name, the only thing typed in bold, your identity, already part of the archive. Whatever's behind that door, it knows you're here. It's been waiting. You step forward. The door accepts the key with a soft click. It doesn't creak. It exhales. And as it swings inward, the air shifts again. Dust, iron, something bitter underneath. You step into the next room. You were prepared for surveillance, for documents, files, weapons. You weren't prepared for this. It's a replica, a courtroom. Not just any courtroom. The one from Gabriel's trial. Same layout. Same number of seats. Same jury box. Same high bench. But it's wrong. Because every figure in this room is a mannequin. Plastic. Posed. Every juror sits in place. Frozen. Except one. Seat number 6. Your seat. Empty. You walk the aisle. Slowly. There's no sound, but the hum of old fluorescents. Each mannequin has a tag clipped to their collar. Juror 1, paid off. Juror 2, emotionally manipulated. Juror 3, surveillance compromised. Juror 8, false identity. Juror 11, dead before verdict. Juror, never existed. Your stomach twists. This wasn't a trial. This was a script, and you were a prop. At the judge's bench, there's a single sheet of paper, typed in the same red ink as before. Judgment irrelevant, truth distorted. You were never meant to see the full play. Beneath it, a photo, black and white, grainy. It's you, taken from above. Your head down. Reading, studying, dated months before the trial began. You whisper, "Why me?" And that's when the projector above the bench hums to life. The back wall glows. A reel flickers. Footage plays. You, at home. You, entering the court building. You, talking to a stranger outside the courthouse. Same stranger in 3 clips. Different disguises. Same eyes. Miranda. No. Older. You've seen her now. In the archive room. She's always been there. Directing. A voice begins to play over the footage. Distorted. Female. Familiar. Control the juror. Control the verdict. Plant a doubt. Cultivate a truth. When the trial ends, the real story begins. You grip the bench to stay standing, and then the voice speaks your name. Come home. The screen goes black. The room doesn't. It stays lit. But now, there's something else. A door behind the jury box, lit faintly red. It pulses like a heartbeat. You've come this far. But deeper still, there's more. Because if this courtroom is a lie, what's waiting in the judge's chamber, and who's been watching from there all along? Chapter 15. The Chamber of Revisions. The red door hums, not mechanical, not electric. It's organic, a slow, rhythmic pulse. Like something alive is breathing beneath the wood. You stand still, because now it's not just about truth, not just about guilt. It's about who wrote the story you're trapped in, and who gave you the illusion of choice. You place your hand on the doorknob. It's warm, like someone just let go of it. Inside, dim light, no windows. A circular room, lined with shelves of identical black binders. Each spine embossed with the same thing. Revised transcript, juror number 6. Each one is dated. Some go back years. You grab one at random, open it. Typed lines, courtroom dialogue, witness statements. But they're not from your trial. They're drafts, versions, one where the prosecution breaks down mid-argument. One where Gabriel confesses mid-testimony. One where you, the juror, stand and object. It was never a trial. It was a rehearsal, over and over, until the version they wanted finally played out. A single desk sits at the center of the chamber, lit by a green banker's lamp. A file lies open, pages fanned like feathers. Your name on the first page, and under it, final draft, terminate juror post-trial, memory suppression pending. You freeze, your breath hitches. And then you see the last line typed in a new font. Darker ink, override logged, access code, Miranda, X. Someone changed the ending, and it wasn't them. It was her. You turn fast. There's a shape now in the doorway, a silhouette. Not a mannequin, not a projection. Miranda. She steps into the room. No lab coat, no headset, just a black dress and gloves. Like she came straight from a funeral. Yours. You weren't supposed to find this, she says quietly. Her voice is calm, flat, but there's a tremor beneath it. You stare at her. You changed the file. I delayed it, she replies. That's all. Why? She doesn't answer. Instead, she walks to the shelves, runs her fingers across the binders. These aren't evidence, she says. They're instructions. Every case, every juror, every variable. You whisper. You were in on it. She turns sharply. No, I was the editor. She slides a thin USB stick onto the desk. It's unmarked. I logged the real verdict. The one before it was rewritten. What was it? She doesn't blink. Not guilty. 12-0. You remembered. You fought for him. Your heart stutters, but I don't remember. They made sure you wouldn't. They wiped the revision in real time. Only I kept a copy. You step closer. Why are you telling me this now? Miranda's eyes dim. Because someone else has the next draft. She looks toward the wall. The binders begin to shift. One falls, then another. Then the lights flicker. You reach for the USB. It's warm in your hand, like the door was. You can still leave, she says. But if you do, the lights snap off. One emergency bulb glows red overhead. You'll never know who the story ends with. Chapter 16. The draft beneath the dust. The wall groans. You don't need to touch it. It peels away for you. The binders scatter, some disintegrating midair like ash. Behind them, a hidden corridor. Its entrance chiseled crudely into the wall. No hinges, no lock, just darkness. Miranda doesn't follow. You ask why? She looks down. Because this version doesn't allow me to. You pause. The USB drive is still in your pocket, solid, pulsing, faintly. Whatever's at the end of that tunnel knows you're coming. And it's been written that way. You descend into the corridor. The air shifts from musty paper to something colder, metallic. The tunnel isn't straight. It coils. Each step turns you farther from what you knew, or thought you knew. Finally, a door. Steel. Riveted. A plaque reads observation deck. You push it open, and suddenly you're looking down on a courtroom. Not a courtroom, your courtroom, frozen in motion. 12 jurors, a judge, a prosecutor, a defense attorney, and you, again, sitting in the box. A clone, a memory. No, it's a live feed of a replay. One of the many versions archived below. You scan the room and spot something off. The man at the defense table isn't Gabriel. It's you. There's a control panel before you, dials, toggles, timelines, each marked with names, events, and verdicts. A screen flickers above the console. Select outcome branch, suppressed testimony, juror override, defendant substitution, memory loop, break, branch, red text. You press break branch. Okay. The entire screen flickers violently and then goes black. A new screen appears. Not digital. It's a mirror. You see yourself. Behind you, a row of monitors, each playing a different version of your life. Some with endings, some without. On one, you see yourself walking out of the courtroom, free. On another, you're being escorted away in cuffs. On another, you're alone in a padded cell, murmuring the nursery rhyme over and over. 12 little lines. One got cut. Now the ending doesn't match up. Then you hear it, a child's voice, reciting the rhyme behind you. You turn, there's no child, just a single tape recorder whirring softly. You pick it up, hit stop. A label is scratched onto the plastic casing. Original version, do not erase. Your hands shake. You slot it into a new port on the console. A prompt appears. Reinsert memory warning. Irreversible merge. You don't hesitate. You press yes. The room cracks. Guys, reality phrase. You're in the courtroom. Everyone's watching you. The judge says, you may read the verdict. You rise. Your mouth opens, but the words are new, not theirs, not scripted. Yours. I was part of it. You say, gasps. I was planted, manipulated. But I remember now. The judge leans forward. You're not the juror anymore. You nod. You finally understand. You're the witness. And this is the testimony they didn't expect. Chapter 17. The stand they never built you. Stand there, heart pounding. The gallery still gasping from your confession. The judge's gavel doesn't strike. The court reporter doesn't type. The prosecutor's pen hovers, never landing. Time is waiting for you. You're not in the system now. You're outside it, rewriting from the inside. I request to testify. You say, the judge blinks. You're not. I am now. Silence. Then, without a word, he gestures toward the witness box. You walk there slowly. You sit down. You speak. This entire case was never about the truth. You gesture at the lawyers. They argued versions. You point to the jury. They were fed edits. You lean into the mic. And I was the control variable. The wild card? No one interrupts. Because they can't. You're not playing by the courtroom's rules anymore. You're speaking to the architecture beneath it all. The man you put on trial wasn't the one who did it. The courtroom breathes again. But he wasn't innocent either. The prosecutor leans in, wary. What do you mean? You meet his eyes. He was built to be guilty. Suddenly, the lights above flicker. A hidden speaker buzzes. Unauthorized thread detected. Purging in 30 seconds. You speak faster. They created this version of events. They made him his past, his guilt, the evidence. But they made a mistake. What mistake? The judge demands. They let me watch it. 20 seconds. You pull out the USB drive from your pocket. The courtroom stares as you place it on the bench. This contains everything they didn't want shown. The missing testimonies, the altered memories, the real reason the victim died. The bailiff moves toward you. 10 seconds. You slam your hand down on the USB. Objection. You say, and it echoes not just in the room, but through the system. The lights die. The screen goes black. The courtroom freezes mid-motion. Then a new room loads. You're still in the witness box. But the judge is gone. So is the jury. Instead, a solitary woman stands across from you. She's dressed in black. No robe, no badge, but you recognize her. She's not a character, she's a creator. She looks at you like a failed experiment. You weren't supposed to override the story, she says. You smile. I finished it. She holds out her hand. Give it back. The truth, the file, the drive. You stare at her outstretched fingers. Then you look down at the USB, now pulsing red instead of blue. I'll give it back, you say, on one condition. She raises an eyebrow. Let me write the next one. She hesitates and smiles. Deal. Chapter 18. The trial. They tried to bury you. Stand in a room with no walls, no jury, no prosecutor, no clock. Just you and her. The one who writes beneath the surface. The one who let you rewrite. She hands you a pen. Not digital, not stylus. A real one. Cold, heavy, permanent. You've earned it, she says. You grip it like it's a weapon or a confession. Where do I begin, you ask? She smiles. Where it hurts? Ali. You start with the first manipulation. The victim's past. It wasn't an affair. It wasn't blackmail. It was erasure. They deleted who she used to be and rewrote her into someone killable, someone disposable. You draw the timeline. Not straight, not linear, circular, loops, fractures, like memory. Then you move to the accused. He wasn't a killer. He was a placeholder, built from stereotypes, patchwork trauma, and bias algorithms. A man born guilty in the eyes of the system because someone needed to be. And when you testify on this blank canvas of code and justice, you don't just expose what they did, you expose why. They built the case to feel real. You say aloud, but they forgot truth doesn't feel clean. It feels jagged, bloody, disordered. You turn to her, the silent architect. You knew this was broken. She doesn't deny it. I knew it wasn't finished. A new projection lights the room. Video files, unprocessed testimonies, unfiled reports, audio of the victim, screaming something that was never allowed in court. I know why they want me gone. He's not the killer, but they'll make him one. You freeze the clip. You look at her. This is the part you cut. She nods. And now you're putting it back. You insert the USB again, but this time it doesn't load. It unravels not just data, not just secrets. It unravels the narrative, the courtroom, the timeline, the trial itself. They melt around you, leaving just a single blinking prompt. Do you wish to rewrite the verdict? Yes, but not just the verdict. The whole damn case. Chapter 19. The verdict. They never expected. You've broken the courtroom. What's left isn't a building. It's an interface. And standing in its center is the system. Not a judge, not a man, but a voice, disembodied, omniscient, deadly. You have corrupted the trial. You've rewritten protected files. This violates judicial protocol 9-X. You don't flinch because protocol was their weapon. And now You've learned how to turn it into a scalpel. You want a retrial, the voice echoes. No, you want a resurrection, not of the victim, of the truth. So you build your case like code, motive fabricated, evidence contaminated, testimony silenced, defense denied. The victim wasn't supposed to survive, but she left a trail in metadata, in trauma, in you. From behind the voice, they emerge. The architects, the prosecutors, the analysts, the deep state coders who engineered guilt like product placement. We didn't kill her. One says, we just cleaned up the noise. But noise is where truth lives. So you press play. On the one recording no one cleared, the final voicemail, her voice, cracking. If this ends, it won't be because I was wrong. It'll be because I was inconvenient. The room shakes. The interface glitches. The architects stare at you not like an enemy anymore, like a threat they didn't see coming. You can't rewrite history. One hisses. You step forward. I'm not rewriting it. I'm reclaiming it. They try to shut it down, try to wipe the files, but they don't realize. You're not logged in anymore. You are the system now. And your first update is this. Case reopened. Verdict overturned. Liars unmasked. Behind you, the screen lights up with a new case name. The People versus the Program. And the first witness is the one they forgot. The victim, in her own voice, unfiltered, unedited, unburied. Chapter 20. The final line they never saw coming. You've come too far to turn back. You're not in the courtroom anymore. You're in the breach. Oh, the space between justice and memory, and the only way forward is through the lie that started it all. They try one last time to silence you. A corrupted memory injection, a false confession planted in your record, an anonymous tip that frames you for the system breach. But none of it sticks because you've made yourself untraceable. Not by hiding, but by becoming too visible to erase. You've weaponized transparency, turned every file into a mirror. Every buried truth into a minefield. Now, the entire city watches, not a courtroom, a broadcast, millions of eyes, and every one of them hears the final transmission. The accused was never the criminal. The criminal was the one who wrote the story and locked the ending. The architects try to redact the feed, but you've already open-sourced the evidence. Justice is no longer a verdict. It's a virus, and it's spreading. There's one last choice, the only one that matters. Do you walk away now that the truth is out? Or do you stay and burn the rest of it down? The files, the names, the system, the safety. You look in the mirror, you see her? The victim they erased. She's not afraid anymore, and neither are you, because this isn't about guilt or innocence anymore. It's about taking back the pen, writing the ending they never dared. You turn back to the screen. Type 2 lines. One for her, one for you. We were not the ones who needed saving. We were the ones who needed remembering. Chapter 21. As I have said before, this is not an accurate account of a political campaign. I was out of the mainstream, in a backwater, where I only caught echoes of what went on. I was aware of an increasing sense of urgency, which seemed to be striking everyone but myself. There were 2 last frenzied days of electioneering. Gabriel came in twice during the time for a drink. When he relaxed, he looked fagged out. His voice was hoarse with addressing open-air meetings. But though tired, his vitality was unimpaired. He said very little to me, probably because he was saving both his voice and his energy. He tossed off his drink and murmured, "What a hell of a life this is, the damn fool things you have to say to people. Serves 'em right that they're governed the way they are." Teresa spent most of her time driving cars. The morning of polling day came with a gale driving in from the Atlantic. The wind howled and rain beat against the house. Isabella dropped in early after breakfast. She wore a black mackintosh. Her hair was wet, her eyes bright. An immense blue rosette was pinned to the mackintosh. "I'm driving people to the polls all day," she said. "So's Rupert. I've suggested to Mrs. Burt that she should come over and see you. Do you mind? You'll be all alone. Won't you?" I didn't mind, though I had actually been quite contented at the prospect of a peaceful day with my books. I had had almost too much company lately. For Isabella to show herself concerned about my solitary state seemed singularly unlike Isabella. It was as though she had suddenly shown signs of adopting her Aunt Agnes's attitude towards me. "Love seems to be having a softening effect upon you, Isabella," I said disapprovingly. "Or did Lady Tressilian think of it?" Isabella smiled. "Aunt Agnes wanted to come and sit with you herself," she said. "She thought it might be lonely for you, and what was it she said? That you might feel out of things." She looked at me inquiringly. It was an idea, I saw, that would not have entered her own head. "You don't agree?" I asked. Isabella replied with her usual candor. "Well, you are out of things." "Admirably true. I'm sorry if you mind about it, but I don't see that Aunt Agnes coming and breathing over you would make it any better. It would only mean that she would be out of things, too. And I'm sure she would like to be in things. I suggested Mrs. Burt coming because she's got to keep out of the way anyway. And I thought you might talk to her, perhaps." "Talk to her?" "Yes." A slight frown appeared on Isabella's white forehead. "You see, I'm no good at talking to people, or letting them talk to me. She goes on and on. Mrs. Burt goes on and on. Yes, and it seems so senseless, but I can't put things properly. I thought perhaps you could. What does she go on and on about?" Isabella sat down on the arm of a chair. She spoke slowly, frowning a little, and giving a very good imitation of a traveler describing the more puzzling rites of some savage tribe. "About what happened. About rushing to Major Gabriel. About its being all her fault. That if he loses the election, she will be to blame. That if only she'd been more careful to begin with. That she ought to have seen what it might lead to. That if she'd been nicer to James Burt and understood him better, he might never have drunk so much. That she blames herself dreadfully, and that she lies awake at night worrying about it and wishing she'd acted differently. That if she's injured Major Gabriel's career, she'll never forgive herself as long as she lives. That nobody is to blame but her. That everything, always, has been her fault." Isabella stopped. She looked at me. She was presenting me, as it were, on a platter, something that was to her quite incomprehensible. A faint echo from the past came to me. Jennifer, knitting her adorable brows and shouldering manfully the blame for what other people had done. I had thought it one of Jennifer's more lovable traits. Now, when Millie Burt was indulging in the same attitude, I saw that such a point of view might be distinctly irritating, which, I reflected cynically, was the difference between thinking someone was a nice little woman and being in love. "Well," I said thoughtfully, I suppose she might very well feel that way. Don't you? Isabella replied, with one of her definite monosyllables. No, she said. But why not explain yourself? You know, said Isabella reproachfully, that I can't say things. She paused, frowned, and then began to speak. Rather doubtfully, she said, things either have happened or they haven't happened. I can see that you might worry beforehand. Even that, I could see, was not a really acceptable position to Isabella. But to go on worrying now, oh, it's as if you went for a walk in the fields and stepped in a cowpat. I mean, it wouldn't be any use spending the whole of the walk talking about it, wishing you hadn't stepped in the cowpat, that you'd gone another way, saying that it was all because you hadn't been looking where you were stepping, and that you always did do silly things like that. After all, the cowpat's there on your shoe. You can't get away from it, but you needn't have it in your mind as well. There's everything else, the fields and the sky and the hedges and the person you're walking with. They're all there too. The only time you've got to think about the cowpat again is when you actually get home, when you have to deal with your shoe. Then you do have to think about it. Extravagance and self-blame was an interesting field on which to speculate. I could see that it was something in which Millie Burt might indulge rather freely, but I didn't really know why some people were more prone to it than others. Teresa had once implied that people like myself, who insisted on cheering people up and putting things right, were not really being as helpful as they thought themselves. But that still didn't touch the question of why human beings enjoyed exaggerating their responsibility for events, Isabella said hopefully. I thought you could talk to her. Supposing she likes, well, blaming herself. I said, why shouldn't she? Because I think it makes it rather dreadful for him. For Major Gabriel, it must be very tiring having to go on and on assuring someone that it's quite all right. It would undoubtedly, I thought to myself, be very tiring. It had been tiring. I remembered. Jennifer had always been excessively tiring, but Jennifer had also had a lovely sweep of blue-black hair, big sad gray eyes, and the most adorable and ridiculous nose. Possibly John Gabriel enjoyed Millie's chestnut hair and soft brown eyes, and didn't mind assuring her that it was quite all right. Has Mrs. Burt any plans? I asked. Oh yes, grandmother has found her a post in Sussex, as a companion housekeeper to someone she knows. It will be quite well paid, and very little work, and there is a good train service to London, so that she can go up and meet her friends. By friends, did Isabella? I wondered. Mean Major John Gabriel Millie was in love with Gabriel. I wondered if Gabriel was a little in love with her. I rather thought he might be. She could divorce Mr. Burt, I think, said Isabella. Only divorce is expensive. She got up. I must go now. You will talk to her, won't you? She paused by the door. Rupert and I are being married a week today, she said softly. Do you think you could come to the church? The scouts could push you there if it's a fine day. Would you like me to come? Yes, I would, very much. Then I will. Thank you. We shall have a week together before he goes back to Burma. But I don't think the war will last very much longer. Do you? Are you happy, Isabella? I asked gently. She nodded. It seems almost frightening when a thing you've thought about for a long time really comes true. Rupert was there in my mind, but getting so faint. She looked at me. Even though it is all real, it doesn't seem real yet. I still feel I might wake up. It's like a dream, she added very softly. To have everything, Rupert, St. Lou, all one's wishes come true. Then, with a start, she cried. I oughtn't to have stayed so long. They gave me 20 minutes off for a cup of tea. I gathered that I had been Isabella's cup of tea. Millie Burt came over to see me in the afternoon, when she had struggled out of her mackintosh and pixie hood and galoshes. She smoothed her brown hair back and powdered her nose a little self-consciously and came to sit beside me. She was really, I thought, very pretty, and also very nice. You couldn't dislike Millie Burt, even if you wanted to. And I, for one, didn't want to. I hope you don't feel dreadfully neglected, she said. Have you had lunch and everything all right? I assured her that my creature comforts had been attended to. Later, I said, we'll have a cup of tea. That will be very nice. She moved restlessly. Oh, Captain Norreys. You do think he'll get in, don't you? Too early to say. Oh, but I mean, what do you think? I'm sure he stands a very good chance, I said soothingly. It would have been a certainty, but for me, how could I be so stupid, so wicked? Oh, Captain Norreys. I just think about it all the time. I blame myself dreadfully. Here we go, I thought. I should stop thinking about it, I advised. But how can I? Her large, pathetic brown eyes opened wide. By the exercise of self-control and willpower, I said. Millie looked highly skeptical and slightly disapproving. I don't feel I ought to take it lightly, not when it's been all my fault. My dear girl, your brooding over it won't help Gabriel to get into Parliament. No. Oh, of course not. But I shall never forgive myself if I've injured his career. We argued on familiar lines. I had been through a lot of this with Jennifer. There was the difference that I was now arguing in cold blood, unaffected by the personal equation of romantic susceptibility. It was a big difference. I liked Millie Burt, but I found her quite infuriating. For God's sake, I exclaimed, don't make such a song and dance about it. For Gabriel's sake, if nobody else's. But it's for his sake I mind. Don't you think the poor fellow has enough on his back without your adding a load of tears and remorse? But if he loses the election, which he hasn't lost yet, and if you've contributed to that result which there is no means of knowing and which mayn't be so at all, won't it be disappointing enough for him to have lost the fight without having a remorseful woman piling her remorse on to make things worse? She looked bewildered and obstinate. But I want to make up for what I've done. Probably you can't. If you can, it will only be by managing to convince Gabriel that losing the election is a marvelous break for him, and that it has set him free for a much more interesting attack upon life. Millie Burt looked scared. Oh, she said, I don't think I could possibly do that. I didn't think she could either. A resourceful and unscrupulous woman could have done it. Teresa, if she had happened to care for John Gabriel, could have done it quite well. Teresa's method with life is, I think, ceaseless attack. Millie Burt's was, undoubtedly, ceaseless picturesque defeat. But then possibly John Gabriel liked picking up pieces and putting them together again. I had once liked that kind of thing myself. You're very fond of him, aren't you? I asked. Tears came into her brown eyes. Oh, I am. I am indeed. I've never met anyone quite like him. I hadn't met anyone like John Gabriel myself. Not that it affected me, as it did Millie Burt. I'd do anything for him. Captain Norreys. I would indeed. If you care very much for him, that is something in itself. Just leave it at that. Who had said, love him and leave him alone? Some psychologist writing advice to mothers, but there was a lot of wisdom in it, applied to others beside children. But can we, really, leave anybody alone? Our enemies? Perhaps by an effort. But those we love, I desisted from what has been termed unprofitable speculation and rang the bell and ordered tea. Over tea, I talked determinedly of films I remembered from last year. Millie liked going to the pictures. She brought me up to date with descriptions of the latest masterpieces. It was all quite pleasant, and I enjoyed it. And I was quite sorry when Millie left me. The far-flung battle line returned at varying hours. They were weary and in differing moods of optimism and despair. Robert alone returned in normal and cheerful mood. He had found a fallen beech tree in a disused quarry, and it had been exactly what his soul had been longing for. He had also had an unusually good lunch at a small pub. Subjects to paint and food are Robert's main topics of conversation, and not at all bad topics either. Chapter 22. It was late the following evening when Teresa came abruptly into the room, pushed back her dark hair from her tired face, and said, "Well, he's in." "What majority?" I asked. 214. I gave a whistle. A near thing. Then, yes, Karslake thinks that if it hadn't been for the Millie Burt business, he'd have had at least 1,000. Karslake doesn't know what he's talking about more than anybody else. It's a terrific sweep to the left, all over the country. Labor's in everywhere. Ours will be one of the few conservative gains. Gabriel was right, I said. He prophesied that. You remember. I know. His judgment's uncanny. Well, I said, little Millie Burt will go to bed happy tonight. She hasn't gummed up the works after all. What a relief that will be to her. Will it? What a cat you are, Teresa, I said. The little thing's devoted to Gabriel. I know she is, she added thoughtfully. They suit each other, too. I think he might be reasonably happy with her. That is, if he wants to be happy. Some people don't. I've never noticed anything unduly ascetic about John Gabriel, I said. I should say he thought of very little beyond doing himself well and grabbing as much as he can out of life. Anyway, he's going to marry money. He told me so. I expect he will start too. He's clearly marked for success. The grosser forms of success. As for Millie, she seems obviously cast for the role of victim now, I suppose. You'll tell me she enjoys it. Teresa, no, of course not. But it takes a really strong character. Hugh, to say I've made a complete ass of myself, and laugh about it, and go on to the next thing. The weak have to have something to take hold of. They have to see their mistakes, not simply as a failure to cope, but as a definite fault, a tragic sin, she added abruptly. I don't believe in evil. All the harm in the world is caused by the weak, usually meaning well, and managing to appear in a wonderfully romantic light. I'm afraid of them. They're dangerous. They are like derelict ships that drift in the darkness and wreck the sound, seaworthy craft. I did not see Gabriel till the following day. He looked deflated and almost devoid of vitality. I hardly recognized him for the man I knew. Election hangover, I suggested. He groaned. You've said it. What a nauseating thing success is. Where's the best sherry? I told him. and he helped himself. I don't suppose Wilbraham feels particularly elated by failure, I remarked. Gabriel gave a pale grin. No, poor devil. Besides, he takes himself and politics quite seriously, I believe. Not too seriously, but seriously enough. Pity he's so wet. I suppose you said all the proper things to each other about a fair fight and good sportsmanship and all that. Gabriel grinned again. Oh, we went through the right drill. Carslake saw to that. What an ass that man is. Knows his job by heart. Word perfect. And absolutely no intelligence behind it. I raised my glass of sherry. Well, I said, here's success to your future career. You're started now. Yes, said Gabriel without enthusiasm. I'm started. You don't seem very cheerful about it. Oh, it's just what you called it. Election hangover. Life's always dull when you've licked the other fellow. But there will be plenty more battles to fight. You watch out for the way I'm going to force myself into the public eye. Labor's got a pretty hefty majority. I know. It's splendid. Really. Gabriel. Strange words for our new Tory MP. Tory MP be hanged. I've got my chance now. Who have we got to put the Tory party on its feet again? Winston's a grand old fighter of wars, especially when you're up against it. But he's too old to tackle a peace. Peace is tricky. Eden's a nice, mealy-mouthed English gentleman, he proceeded, working through various well-known names of the Conservative Party. Not a constructive idea among them. They'll bleat against nationalization and fall with glee upon the socialists' mistakes. And boy, will they make mistakes. They're a fat-headed crowd. Old diehards of trades unionists and irresponsible theorists from Oxford. Our side will do all the old parliamentary tricks. Like pathetic old dogs at a fair, yap, yap, yap first, then stand on their hind legs and revolve in a slow waltz. And where does John Gabriel come? In this attractive picture of the opposition, you can't have D-Day until you've got it thoroughly worked out to the last detail. Then, let it rip. I shall get hold of the young fellows. The people with new ideas who are normally agin the government. Sell 'em an idea. And go all out for that idea. What idea? Gabriel threw me an exasperated glance. You always get things the wrong way round. It doesn't matter a tuppenny halfpenny damn what idea. I could think up half a dozen any time I like. There are only two things that ever stir people politically. One is put something in their pockets. The other is the sort of idea that sounds as though it would make everything come right, and which is extremely easy to grasp, noble but woolly, and which gives you a nice inner glow. Man likes to feel a noble animal, as well as being a well-paid one. You don't want too practical an idea, just something humane, and that isn't directed towards anyone you'll have to meet personally. Have you noticed how subscriptions will pour in for earthquake victims in Turkey or Armenia or somewhere, but nobody really wanted to take an evacuated child into their house, did they? That's human nature. I shall follow your career with great interest, I assured him. In 20 years' time, you'll find me growing fat and living soft, and probably regarded as a public benefactor. Gabriel told me, and then, what do you mean by, and then, I just wondered if you might be bored. Oh, I shall always find some racket or other, just for the fun of it. I was always fascinated by the complete assurance with which Gabriel sketched out his life. I had come to have faith in the fulfillment of his prognostications. He had a knack, I thought, of being right. He had foreseen that the country would vote Labor. He had been sure of his own victory. His life would follow the course he now predicted, not deviating by a hair's breadth. I said rather tritely, "So, all's for the best, in the best of possible worlds." He frowned quickly and irritably and said, "What a way you've got of putting your finger on a sore spot. Norreys." "Why? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Nothing, really." He was silent a moment, then went on. "Ever gone about with a thorn in your finger? Know how maddening it can be. Nothing really bad, but always reminding you, pricking you, hampering you." "What's the thorn?" I asked. "Millie Burt." He stared at me in astonishment. I saw it wasn't Millie Burt. "She's all right," he said. "No harm done there. Luckily. I like her. I hope I'll see something of her in London. None of this beastly local gossip in London." Then, a flush coming over his face, he tugged a package out of his pocket. "I wonder if you'd have a look at this. Is it all right? Do you think wedding present? For Isabella Charteris? Suppose I have to give her something. When is it, next Thursday? Or do you think it's a damn fool kind of present?" I unrolled the package with great interest. What I found gave me a complete surprise. It was the last thing I would have expected John Gabriel to produce as a wedding present. It was a book of hours, exquisitely and delicately illuminated. It was a thing that should have been in a museum. "Don't know exactly what it is," said Gabriel. "Some Catholic business. Couple of 100 years old. But I felt, I don't know, I thought it seemed to go with her. Of course, if you think it's just silly," I hastened to reassure him. "It's beautiful," I said. "A thing anyone would be glad to possess. It's a museum piece. Don't suppose it's the sort of thing she'll care for particularly, but it rather fits with her, if you know what I mean." I nodded. I did know. And after all, I've got to give her something. Not that I like the girl. I've no use for her at all. Stuck-up haughty bit of goods. She's managed to snaffle his lordship all right. I wish her joy of that stuffed shirt. He's a good deal more than a stuffed shirt. Yes, as a matter of fact, he is. At any rate, I've got to remain on good terms with them. As the local MP, I shall dine at the castle and go to the annual garden party and all that. I suppose old Lady St. Lou will have to move over to the Dower House now, that moldy ruin near the church. I should say that anyone who lives there will soon die of rheumatism." He took back the illuminated missal and wrapped it up again. "You really think that it's all right? That it will do? A magnificent and most unusual present?" I assured him. Teresa came in. Gabriel said he was just going. "What's the matter with him?" she asked me when he had gone. "Reaction, I suppose," Teresa said. "It's more than that. I can't help feeling," I said, "that it's a pity he won the election. Failure might have had a sobering effect on him. As it is, he'll be blatant in a couple of years' time. By and large, he's a nasty bit of goods, but I rather fancy that he'll get to the top of the tree all right." I suppose it was the word tree that roused Robert to speech. He had come in with Teresa, but in his own inconspicuous way, so that, as usual, we were quite startled when he spoke. "Oh no, he won't. he said. We looked at him inquiringly. He won't get to the top of the tree, said Robert. Not a chance of it. I should say. He wandered disconsolately round the room and asked why someone always had to hide his palette knife. Chapter 23. The wedding of Lord St. Lew to Isabella Charteris was fixed for Thursday. It was very early, about 1 in the morning, I suppose, when I heard footsteps outside the window on the terrace. I had not been able to sleep. It was one of my bad nights with a good deal of pain. I thought to myself that fancy plays queer tricks, for I could have sworn that they were Isabella's footsteps on the terrace outside. Then I heard her voice. Can I come in, Hugh? The French windows were ajar, as they always were, unless there was a gale blowing. Isabella came in, and I switched on the lamp by my couch. I still had a feeling that I was dreaming. Isabella looked very tall. She had on a long, dark tweed coat and a dark red scarf over her hair. Her face was grave, calm, and rather sad. I could not imagine what she could be doing here at this time of the night, or rather morning, but I felt vaguely alarmed. I no longer had the impression that I was dreaming. In point of fact, I felt exactly the opposite. I felt as though everything that had happened since Rupert St. Lew had come home was a dream. And this was the wakening. I remembered Isabella saying, I still feel I might wake up. And I suddenly realized that that was what had happened to her. The girl who was standing by me was no longer in her dream. She had woken up. And I remembered another thing. Robert saying that there had been no bad fairies at Rupert St. Lew's christening. I had asked him afterwards what he meant, and he had replied, well, if there's not one bad fairy, where's your story? That perhaps was what made Rupert St. Lew not quite real. In spite of his good looks, his intelligence, his rightness, all these things passed through my mind confusedly in the second or two that elapsed before Isabella said, I came to say goodbye to you, Hugh. I stared at her stupidly. Goodbye. Yes. You see, I'm going away. Going away with Rupert. You mean, no, with John Gabriel. I was conscious then of the strange duality of the human mind. Half of my brain was thunderstruck, unbelieving. What Isabella was saying seemed quite incredible, a thing so fantastic that it simply couldn't happen. But somewhere, another part of me was not surprised. It was like an inner voice saying mockingly, but surely you've known this all along. I remembered how, without turning her head, Isabella had known John Gabriel's step on the terrace. I remembered the look on her face when she had come up from the lower garden on the night of the whist drive, and the way she had acted so swiftly in the crisis of Millie Burt. I remembered her saying, Rupert must come soon, with a strange urgency in her voice. She had been afraid then, afraid of what was happening to her. I understood, very imperfectly, the dark urge that was driving her to Gabriel. For some reason or other, the man had a strange quality of attraction for women. Teresa had told me so long ago. Did Isabella love him? I doubted it. And I could see no happiness for her with a man like Gabriel, a man who desired her but did not love her. On his part, it was sheer madness. It would mean abandoning his political career. It would be the ruin of all his ambitions. I couldn't see why he was taking this crazy step. Did he love her? I didn't think so. I thought that in a way, he hated her. She was part of the things the castle, old Lady St. Lou, that had humiliated him ever since he came here. Was that the obscure reason for this act of insanity? Was he avenging that humiliation? Was he willing to smash up his own life if he could smash up the thing that had humiliated him? Was this the common little boy taking his revenge? I loved Isabella. I knew that now. I loved her so much that I had been happy in her happiness, and she had been happy with Rupert in her dream come true of life at St. Lou. She had only feared that it might not be real. What, then, was real John Gabriel number? What she was doing was madness. She must be stopped, pleaded with, persuaded. The words rushed to my lips, but they remained unspoken. To this day, I don't know why. The only reason I can think of is that Isabella was Isabella. I said nothing. She stooped and kissed me. It was not a child's kiss. Her mouth was a woman's mouth. Her lips were cool and fresh. They pressed mine with a sweetness and intensity I shall never forget. It was like being kissed by a flower. She said goodbye, and she went away. Out of the window. Out of my life. To where John Gabriel was waiting for her. And I did not try to stop her. Chapter 24. With the departure of John Gabriel and Isabella from St. Lou, the first part of my story ends. I realize how much it is their story and not mine. Because once they had gone, I can remember little or nothing that happened. It is all vague and confused. I had never been interested in the political side of our life in St. Lou. For me, it was only a backcloth against which the protagonists in the drama moved. But the political repercussions must have been, indeed, I know they were, quite far-reaching. If John Gabriel had had any political conscience, he would not, of course, have done what he did do. He would have been appalled at the prospect of letting his side down. For it did let it down. The local feeling aroused was so tremendous that pressure would have been brought to bear on him to make him resign his newly won seat, if he had not resigned it without being asked. The affair brought great discredit on the Conservative Party. A man with traditions and a more delicate sense of honor would have been acutely sensitive to that. I don't think John Gabriel cared in the slightest. What he had been out for was his own career. By his crazy conduct, he had wrecked this career. That was how he looked at it. He had spoken truly enough when he had prophesied that only a woman would be able to spoil his life. He had not in the least foreseen who that woman would be. He was not fitted by temperament or upbringing to understand the shock and horror felt by people like Lady Tressilian and Mrs. Bigham Charteris. Lady Tressilian had been brought up to believe that to stand for election to Parliament was a duty owed by a man to his country. That was how her father had envisaged it. Gabriel could not even have begun to appreciate such an attitude. The way he looked at it was that the Conservative Party had picked a dud when they picked him. It was a gamble, and they had lost. If things had taken a normal course, they would have done very well for themselves. But there was always the 100th chance, and the 100th chance had happened. Curiously enough, the person who took exactly the same point of view as Gabriel was the Dowager Lady St. Lou. She spoke of it once and once only. In the drawing room at Polnorth House, when she was alone with Teresa and myself, "We cannot," she said, "avoid our share of blame. We knew what the man was like. We nominated a man who was an outsider, who had no real beliefs, no traditions, no true integrity. We knew perfectly well that the man was an adventurer, nothing else, because he had qualities that appealed to the masses. A good war record, a specious appeal. We accepted him. We were prepared to let him use us, because we were prepared to use him. We excused ourselves by saying that we were going with the times. But if there is any reality, any meaning, in the conservative tradition, it must live up to its tradition. We must be represented by men who, if not brilliant, are sincere, who have a stake in the country, who are prepared to take responsibility for those under them, who are not ashamed or uneasy at calling themselves the upper classes, because they accept not only the privileges, but the duties of an upper class. It was the voice of a dying regime speaking. I did not agree with it, but I respected it. New ideas. A new way of life was being born. The old was being swept away. But as an example of the best of the old, Lady St. Louis stood firm. She had her place, and would hold that place until her death. Of Isabella, she did not speak. There the wound had gone deep into the heart. For Isabella, in the old lady's uncompromising view, had betrayed her own class. For John Gabriel, the old martinet could find excuses. He was of the lesser breed without the law. But Isabella had betrayed the citadel from within. Though Lady St. Louis said nothing of Isabella, Lady Tressilian did. She talked to me, I think, because she could talk to no one else, and also because she felt that owing to my invalid state, I did not count. She had an incorrigibly motherly feeling towards my helplessness, and I think she felt almost justified in talking to me as though I were indeed her son. Adelaide, she said, was unapproachable. Maud snapped her head off and immediately went out with the dogs. That vast, sentimental heart of Lady Tressilian's had to unburden itself. She would have felt disloyal discussing the family with Teresa. She did not feel disloyal in discussing it with me. Possibly because she knew I loved Isabella. She loved Isabella, loved her dearly. And she could not stop thinking about her and being puzzled and bewildered by what she had done. It was so unlike her, so very unlike her. Hugh, I do feel that man must have bewitched her. A very dangerous man. I always thought. And she seemed so happy, so perfectly happy. She and Rupert seemed made for each other. I can't understand it. They were happy. They really were. Didn't you think so, too? I said, feeling my way. That yes, I thought they had been happy. I wanted to add, but I did not think that Lady Tressilian would understand. That sometimes happiness is not enough. I can't help feeling that that horrible man must have enticed her away. That somehow or other he hypnotized her. But Addie says no. She says that Isabella would never do anything unless she fully meant to do it. I don't know. I'm sure. Lady St. Louis was. I thought, right there. Lady Tressilian asked, "Do you think they are married? Where do you think they are?" I asked if they had had no word from her. No. Nothing. Nothing but the letter Isabella left. It was written to Addie. She said that she didn't expect Addie would ever forgive her, and that probably Addie was right. And she said, It is no good saying I am sorry for all the pain I shall cause. If I were really sorry, I wouldn't do it. I think Rupert may understand, but perhaps not. I shall always love you all, even if I never see you again. Lady Tressilian looked at me, her eyes full of tears. That poor boy. That poor boy. Dear Rupert. And we had all got so fond of him. I suppose he took it very hard. I had not seen Rupert St. Loup since Isabella's flight. He had left St. Loup on the following day. I don't know where he went or what he did. A week later, he had rejoined his unit in Burma. Lady Tressilian shook her head tearfully. He was so kind, so gentle to us all, but he didn't want to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it. She sighed, but I can't help wondering where they are and what they're doing. Will they get married? Where will they live? Lady Tressilian's mind was essentially feminine. It was direct, practical, occupied with the events of daily life. I could see that already, nebulously. She was building up a picture of Isabella's domestic life. Marriage, a house, children. She had forgiven easily. She loved Isabella. What Isabella had done was shocking. It was disgraceful. It had let the family down, but it was also romantic. And Lady Tressilian was nothing if not romantic. As I say, my memories of the next 2 years at St. Loup are vague. There was a by-election in which Mr. Wilbraham was returned by a large majority. I don't even remember who was the conservative candidate. Some country gentleman of blameless life and no mass appeal. I fancy politics, without John Gabriel, no longer held my attention. My own health began to occupy most of my thoughts. I went to a hospital and started a series of operations which left me no worse, if little better. Teresa and Robert remained on in Polnorth House. The 3 old ladies of St. Loup Castle left the castle and moved into a small Victorian house with an attractive garden. The castle was let for a year to some people from the north of England. 18 months later, Rupert St. Loup came back to England and married an American girl with money. They had, Teresa wrote me, great plans for the complete restoration of the castle as soon as building regulations permitted. Illogically, I hated to think of St. Loup Castle restored, where Gabriel and Isabella actually were, and what Gabriel was doing. Nobody knew. In 1947, Robert had a successful show in London of his Cornish pictures. At that time, great advances were being made in surgery. On the continent, various foreign surgeons had been doing remarkable things in cases like mine. One of the few advantages that war brings in its train is a leap forward in the alleviation of human suffering. My own surgeon in London was enthusiastic about the work done by a Jewish doctor in Slovakia, working in the underground movements during the war. He had made daring experiments and had achieved really spectacular results. In a case like mine, it was possible. So my own man thought that he could attempt something which no English surgeon would undertake. That was why, in the autumn of 1947, I traveled out to Zagreb to consult Dr. Krasvich. There is no need to go into details of my own history. Suffice to say that Dr. Krasvich, whom I found a sensitive and clever surgeon, pronounced his belief that by an operation my condition could be immensely improved. It would be possible, he hoped, that I should be able to move about freely on crutches instead of lying prone, a helpless, shattered wreck. It was arranged that I should go into his clinic forthwith. My hopes and his were realized. At the end of 6 months, I emerged able, as he had promised, to walk with the aid of crutches. I cannot hope to describe how exciting it made life for me. I remained on in Zagrade, since I had to have manipulative treatment several times a week. On a summer evening, I swung myself slowly and painfully along the Zagrade main street and came to anchor in a small open-air cafe where I ordered beer. It was then, looking across the occupied tables, that I saw John Gabriel. It was a shock. I had not thought of him for some time. I had no idea that he was in this part of the world. But what was a worse shock was the appearance of the man. He had gone down in the world. His face had always been slightly coarse, but it was coarsened now, almost out of recognition. It was bloated and unhealthy, the eyes bloodshot. At this very moment, I realized that he was slightly drunk. He looked across, saw me, and rising, came unsteadily over to my table. "Well," he said, "look who's here. Last man in the world I'd have expected to see." It would have given me enormous pleasure to have driven my fist into John Gabriel's face, but apart from the fact that I was not in fighting condition, I wanted to learn news of Isabella. I invited him to sit down and have a drink. "Thanks, Norreys. I will. How's St. Lou and the gingerbread castle and all the old tabby cats?" I told him that it was some time since I had been in St. Lou, that the castle was let, and that the 3 old ladies had moved out. He said hopefully that that must have been a nasty pill for the dowager to swallow. I said I thought that she had been glad to go. I told him that Rupert St. Lou was engaged to be married. "In fact," said Gabriel, "everything's turned out very nicely for everybody." I managed not to reply. I saw the old grin curving his mouth upwards. "Come on, Norreys," he said. "Don't sit there looking as though you've swallowed a poker. Ask about her. That's what you want to know, isn't it?" The trouble with Gabriel was that he always carried the war into the enemy's camp. I acknowledged defeat. "How is Isabella?" I said. "She's all right. I haven't done the characteristic seducer's act and abandoned her in a garret." It became still more difficult for me to refrain from hitting Gabriel. He had always had the power of being offensive. He was far more offensive now that he had begun to go downhill. "She's here in Zagrade?" I asked. "Yes, you'd better come and call. Nice for her to see an old friend and hear the St. Lou news. Would it be nice for her, I wondered? Was there some far-off echo of sadism in Gabriel's voice?" I said, my voice slightly embarrassed. "Are you married?" His grin was positively fiendish. "No, Norreys, we're not married. You can go back and tell that to the old bitch at St. Lou." Curious, the way Lady St. Lou still rankled. "I'm not likely to mention the subject to her," I said coldly. "It's like that. Is it Isabella's disgraced the family?" He tilted his chair backwards. "Lord, I'd like to have seen their faces that morning, the morning when they found we'd gone off together. My God, you're a swine." "Gabriel," I said, my self-control slipping. He was not at all annoyed. "Depends how you look at it," he said. "Your outlook on life is so very narrow, Norreys. At any rate, I've got a few decent instincts," I said sharply. "You're so English. I must introduce you to the wide cosmopolitan set in which Isabella and I move." You don't look frightfully well, if I may say so, I said. That's because I drink too much, said Gabriel promptly. I'm a bit high now, but cheer up, he went on. Isabella doesn't drink. I can't think why not, but she doesn't. She's still got that schoolgirl complexion. You'll enjoy seeing her again. I would like to see her, I said slowly, but I wasn't sure as I said it. If it was true, would I like to see her? Wouldn't it, really? Be sheer pain? Did she want to see me? Probably not. If I could know how she felt. No illegitimate brats. You'll be glad to hear, said Gabriel cheerfully. I looked at him. He said softly, You do hate me, don't you? Norreys. I think I've good reason to. I don't see it that way. You got a lot of entertainment out of me at St. Lou. Oh yes, you did. Interest in my doings probably kept you from committing suicide. I should certainly have committed suicide in your place. It's no good hating me just because you are crazy about Isabella. Oh yes, you are. You were then, and you are now. That's why you're sitting here pretending to be amicable and really loathing my guts. Isabella and I were friends, I said, a thing I don't suppose you're capable of understanding. I didn't mean you made passes at her, old boy. I know that isn't your line of country. Soul affinity. And spiritual uplift. Well, it will be nice for her to see an old friend. I wonder, I said slowly, do you really think that she would like to see me? His demeanor changed. He scowled furiously. Why the devil not? Why shouldn't she want to see you? I'm asking you, I said. He said, I'd like her to see you. That grated on me. I said, in this case, we'll go by what she prefers. He suddenly beamed into a smile again. Of course she'll want to see you. Old boy, I was just ragging you. I'll give you the address. Look her up any time you like. She's usually in. What are you doing nowadays? I asked. He winked, closing one eye and tilting his head sideways. Undercover work, old boy, very hush-hush, poorly paid, though, £1,000 a year. I'd be getting now as an MP. I told you if Labour got in, it would go up. I often remind Isabella how much I've given up for her sake. How I loathed that coarse, jeering devil. I wanted to. Well, I wanted to do many things that were physically impossible to me. Instead, I contained myself and accepted the bit of dirty paper with the address scrawled on it that he shoved across to me. It was a long time before I could get to sleep that night. I was beset by fears for Isabella. I wondered if it was possible to get her to leave Gabriel. Obviously, the whole thing had turned out badly. How badly, I only realized on the following day. I found the address that Gabriel had given me. It was a disreputable-looking house in a mean back street. That quarter of the town was a bad one. The furtive men and the brazen-painted women I passed told me that. I found the house and asked, in German, of a vast, blousy woman who was standing in the doorway, for the English lady. She understood German, fortunately, and directed me to the top floor. I climbed with difficulty, my crutches slipping. The house was filthy. It smelt. My heart dropped down into my boots. My beautiful, proud Isabella. To have come down to this, but at the same time, my own resolve strengthened. I would get her out of all this. Take her back to England. I arrived, panting, on the top floor and knocked on the door. A voice called out something in Czech from inside. I knew that voice. It was Isabella's. I opened the door and went in. I don't think I can ever explain the extraordinary effect that room had on me. To begin with, it was definitely squalid. Broken down furniture, tawdry hangings, an unpleasant-looking and somehow lewd brass bedstead. The place was at once clean and dirty. That is, the walls were streaked with dirt, the ceiling black, and there was the faint, unpleasant odor of bugs. There was no surface dirt. The bed was made, the ashtrays empty. There was no litter and no dust. But it was nevertheless a sordid room. In the middle of it, sitting with her feet tucked up under her, and embroidering a piece of silk, was Isabella. She looked exactly as she had looked when she left St. Lou. Her dress actually was shabby, but it had cut in style, and though old, she wore it with ease and distinction. Her hair was still in its long, shimmering page-boy bob. Her face was beautiful, calm, and grave. She and the room had, I felt, nothing to do with each other. She was here, in the midst of it, exactly as she might have been in the midst of a desert, or on the deck of a ship. It was not her home. It was a place where she happened, just at the moment, to be. She stared for a second, then, jumping up, came towards me with a glad, surprised face, her hands outstretched. I saw then that Gabriel had not told her of my being in Zagrad. I wondered why. Her hands came affectionately into mine. She raised her face and kissed me. Hugh, how lovely. She did not ask how I happened to be in Zagrad. She did not comment on the fact that I could now walk, whereas when she had last seen me, I was prone on a couch. All that concerned her was that her friend had come, and that she was glad to see him. She was, in fact, my Isabella. She found a chair for me and drew it up to her own. Well, Isabella, I said, what are you doing with yourself? Her reply was typical. She immediately showed me her embroidery. I began it 3 weeks ago. Do you like it? Her voice was anxious. I took the piece of work into my hand. It was a square of old silk, a delicate dove gray in color, slightly faded, very soft to handle. On it, Isabella was embroidering a design of dark red roses, wallflowers, and pale mauve stalks. It was beautiful work, very fine, exquisitely executed. It's lovely, Isabella, I said, quite lovely. I felt, as always, the strange fairy story quality that always surrounded Isabella. Here was the captive maiden doing fine embroidery in the ogre's tower. It's beautiful, I said, handing it back to her. But this place is awful. She looked round with a casual, almost surprised glance. Yes, she said, I suppose it is. Just that, no more. It baffled me, as Isabella had always baffled me. I saw vaguely that it mattered very little to Isabella what her surroundings were. She was not thinking of them. They mattered to her no more than the upholstery or decorations in a railway train. Mattered to someone who is engaged upon an important journey. This room was the place she happened to be living in at the moment, her attention drawn to it. She agreed that it was not a nice place, but the fact did not really interest her. Her embroidery interested her far more. I said, I saw John Gabriel last night. Did you? Where he didn't tell me? I said, that's how I got your address. He invited me to come and look you up. I'm so glad you did. Oh, I am glad. How warming it was, her eager pleasure in my presence. Isabella, dear Isabella, I said, are you all right? Are you happy? She stared at me, as though doubtful of my meaning. All this, I said, it's so different from what you've been used to. Wouldn't you like to leave it all? To come back with me? To London, if not to St. Lou? She shook her head. John's doing something here. I don't know what exactly. What I'm trying to ask you is if you're happy with him. I don't think you can be. If you once made a dreadful mistake, Isabella, don't be too proud to own it now. Leave him. She looked down at her work. Strangely, a little smile hovered on her lips. Oh no, I couldn't do that. Do you love him so much? Isabella, are you really happy with him? I ask, because I care for you so much. She said gravely. You mean happy? Happy in the way I was happy at St. Lou? Yes? No? Of course I'm not. Then chuck it all up. Come back with me and start afresh. Again, she gave that funny little smile. Oh no, I couldn't do that. After all, I said, rather embarrassed. You're not married to him. No, I'm not married. Don't you think? I felt awkward, embarrassed. All the things that so palpably Isabella was not. Still, I had to find out exactly how matters stood between these two strange people. Why aren't you married? I said brazenly. She was not offended. I had, instead, the impression that it was the first time the question had presented itself to her. Why was it that she and John Gabriel were not married? She sat quite still, thoughtful, asking herself why. Then she said, doubtfully, in a rather puzzled way, I don't think John wants to marry me. I managed not to explode into anger. Surely, I said, there is no reason why you should not marry. No, her tone was doubtful. He owes it to you. It is the least he can do. She shook her head slowly. No, she said. It was not like that at all. What was not like that? She brought the words out slowly, following up events in her mind. When I came away from St. Lou, it was not to marry John instead of marrying Rupert. He wanted me to come away with him, and I came. He didn't speak of marriage. I don't think he thought of it. All this, she moved her hand slightly. By this, I took it she meant not so much the actual rooms, the squalid surroundings, as the transitory character of their life together. This isn't marriage. Marriage is something quite different. You and Rupert, I began. She interrupted me, relieved apparently that I had grasped her point. Yes, she said, that would have been marriage. Then what? I wondered. Did she consider her life with John Gabriel to be, I didn't like to ask outright. Tell me, Isabella, I said, what do you actually understand by marriage? What does marriage mean to you, apart from its pure legal significance? She was very thoughtful about that. I think it would mean becoming part of someone's life, fitting in, taking your place, and it's being your rightful place, where you belong. Marriage to Isabella had, I saw, a structural significance. You mean, I said, that you can't share Gabriel's life? No, I don't know how. I wish I could. You see, she stretched out her long, narrow hands in front of her. I don't know anything about him. I stared at her, fascinated. I thought that she was instinctively right. She did not know the first thing about John Gabriel. She never would know the first thing about him, however long she stayed with him. But I could see, also, that that might not affect her emotional feeling for him, and he, I thought suddenly, was in the same boat. He was like a man who had bought, or rather had looted, an expensive and delicate piece of craftsmanship, and who had no conception of the scientific principles underlying its elaborate mechanism. "So long," I said slowly, "as you are not unhappy." She looked back at me with blind, unseeing eyes. Either she deliberately concealed the answer to my question, or she did not know the answer herself. I think the latter. She was living through a deep and poignant experience, and she could not define it for my benefit in exact terms. I said gently, "Shall I give them your love at St. Lou?" She sat very still. Tears came up in her eyes and spilled. They were tears not of sorrow, but of remembrance. "If you could put the clock back, Isabella," I said, "if you were free to choose, would you make the same choice again?" It was cruel of me, perhaps, but I had to know, to be sure. But she looked at me without comprehension. "Does one ever really have any choice about anything?" "Well, that is a matter of opinion. Life is easier, perhaps, for uncompromising realists like Isabella Charteris, who cannot perceive any alternative way. Yet, as I now believe, there was to come a moment when Isabella had a definite choice and took one way in preference to the other, with full knowledge that it was a choice. But that was not yet. Then, as I stood looking at Isabella, I heard footsteps stumbling up the stairs. John Gabriel flung the door open with a flourish and lurched into the room. He was not a particularly pretty sight. "Hello?" he said. "Found your way here all right." "Yes," I said shortly. For the life of me, I couldn't say any more. I went towards the door. "Sorry," I mumbled. "I've got to be going." He stood aside a little to let me pass. "Well?" he said, and there was something in his expression that I didn't understand. "Don't ever say I didn't give you your chance." I didn't know quite what he meant. He went on, "Dine with us at the Café Gris tomorrow night. I'm throwing a party. Isabella would like you to come, wouldn't you, Isabella?" I looked back. She was smiling at me gravely. "Yes, do come," she said. Her face was calm and unperturbed. She was smoothing and sorting her silks. I caught a fleeting glimpse of something in Gabriel's face that I didn't understand. It might have been desperation. I went down that horrid staircase quickly as a cripple could go. I wanted to get out into the sunlight, away from the strange conjunction of Gabriel and Isabella. Gabriel had changed, for the worse. Isabella had not changed at all. In my puzzled mind, I felt that there must be some significance in that, if only I could find it. Chapter 25. There are some horrible memories you can never manage to forget. One of those was that nightmare evening in the Café Gris. I am convinced that that party was arranged entirely to satisfy Gabriel's malice towards me. It was, in my view, an infamous party. John Gabriel's friends and associates in Zagreb were introduced to me there, and in the midst of them sat Isabella. They were men and women she should never have been allowed to meet. There were drunkards and perverts, coarse-painted trollops, diseased dope addicts, everything that was mean, base, and depraved. And they were not redeemed, as might so easily have been the case, by artistic talent. Here were no writers, musicians, poets, or painters, not even witty talkers. They were the dregs of the cosmopolitan world. They were Gabriel's choice. It was as though he had deliberately wished to show how low he could go. I was wild with resentment for Isabella's sake. How dared he bring her into such a company? And then I looked at her, and resentment dropped from me. She showed no avoidance, no disgust. Still less did she display any anxiety to gloss over a difficult situation. She sat there, smiling quietly, the same remote Acropolis maiden smile. She was gravely polite and quite untouched by her company. They did not, I saw, affect her, any more than the squalid lodgings in which she lived affected her. I remembered from long ago her answer to my question as to whether she was interested in politics. She had said then, looking a little vague, "It is one of the things we do." Tonight, I divined, came into the same category. If I had asked her what she felt about this party, she would have said, in the same tone, "It's the kind of party we have." She accepted it without resentment, and without any particular interest, as one of the things John Gabriel chose to do. I looked across the table at her, and she smiled back at me. My agony and distress on her behalf were simply not needed. A flower can bloom as well on a dung heap as anywhere else, perhaps better, for you notice that it is a flower. We left the cafe in a body. Nearly everybody was drunk. As we stepped into the street to cross it, a large car came noiselessly out of the darkness. It nearly hit Isabella, but she saw her danger in time and made a sudden leap for the pavement. I saw the whiteness of her face and the sharp terror in her eyes as the car went hooting down the street. Here, then, she was still vulnerable. Life, in all its vicissitudes, was powerless to affect her. She could stand up to life, but not to death, or the threat of death. Even now, with the danger over, she was white and shaken. Gabriel cried out, "My God, that was a near shave. Are you all right, Isabella?" She said, "Oh, yes, I'm all right." But the fear was still in her voice. She looked at me and said, "You see, I'm still a coward. Seek. There isn't very much more to tell." That evening at the Café Gris was the last time I was to see Isabella. Tragedy came, as it usually comes, unheralded, without forewarning. I was just wondering whether to go and see Isabella again, whether to write, whether to leave Zagrad without seeing her, when Gabriel was shown in to see me. I can't say that I noticed anything unusual in his appearance. A certain nervous excitement, perhaps a tightness, I don't know. He said quite calmly, "Isabella's dead." I stared at him. I didn't take it in at first. I simply didn't feel that it could be true. He saw my disbelief. "Oh, yes," he said, "it's true. She was shot." I found my tongue. As a cold sense of catastrophe, of utter loss, spread through me. "Shot," I said. "Shot. How could she be shot? How did it happen?" He told me. They had been sitting together in the cafe where I had first met him. He asked me, Have you ever seen pictures of Stolanov? Do you see any likeness to me in him? Stolanov was at that time virtual dictator of Slovakia. I looked at Gabriel carefully, and I realized that there was quite a strong facial resemblance. When Gabriel's hair fell forward untidily over his face, as it frequently did, that slight resemblance was heightened. What happened? I asked. A damn fool of a student. He thought he recognized me as Stolanov. He had a revolver with him. He ran shooting across the cafe, yelling out Stolanov. Stolanov. I've got you at last. There wasn't any time to do anything at all. He fired. He didn't hit me. He hit Isabella. He paused, then added, she was killed instantaneously. The bullet went through her heart. My God, I said, and you couldn't do anything. It seemed to me incredible that Gabriel hadn't been able to do anything. He flushed. No, he said, I couldn't do anything. I was behind the table against the wall. There wasn't time to do anything. I was silent. I was still stunned, numb. Gabriel sat watching me. He still showed no sign of emotion. So that's what you've brought her to, I said at last. He shrugged his shoulders. Yes, if you like to put it that way. It's your doing that she was here, in that foul house, in this foul town. But for you, she might have been. I stopped. He finished the sentence for me. She might have been Lady St. Lou, living in a castle by the sea, living in a gingerbread castle with a gingerbread husband and a gingerbread child on her knee. Perhaps the sneer in his voice maddened me. My God, Gabriel, I said, I don't think I shall ever forgive you. I can't say it interests me very much. Norreys. If you forgive me or not, what are you doing here? Anyway, I asked angrily. Why come to me? What do you want? He said quietly. I want you to take her back to St. Lou. You can manage it, I expect. She ought to be buried there, not here where she doesn't belong. No, I said, she doesn't belong here. I looked at him. In the midst of the pain I was beginning to feel, I was aware of a rising curiosity. Why did you ever bring her away? What was the idea that lay behind it all? Did you want her so much? Enough to chuck up your career? All the things you set so much store by? Again, he shrugged his shoulders. I cried angrily. I don't understand. Understand? Of course you don't understand. His voice startled me. It was hoarse and rasping. You'll never understand anything. What do you know about suffering? A good deal, I said, stung. No, you don't. You don't know what suffering, real suffering, is. Don't you understand that I've never known once what she's been thinking? I've never been able to talk to her. I tell you, Norreys, I've done everything to break her spirit. Everything. I've taken her through the mud, through the dregs, and I don't think she even knows what I've been doing. She can't soil, and she can't scare. That's what Isabella is like. It's frightening, I tell you, frightening. Rose, tears, defiance. That's what I'd always imagined. And myself winning. But I didn't win. You can't win when you're fighting someone who doesn't know there is a fight. And I couldn't talk to her. I could never talk to her. I've drunk myself paralytic. I've tried drugs. I've gone with other women. It hasn't touched her. She's sat there with her feet tucked up, embroidering her silk flowers. and sometimes singing to herself. She might be still in her castle by the sea. She's still in her blasted fairy story. She brought it with her. He had slid insensibly into the present tense. But he stopped suddenly. He dropped into a chair. "You don't understand," he said. "How can you? Well, I'm licked. I've had her body. I've never had anything else. Now, her body's escaped me." He got up. "Take her back to St. Louis." "I will," I said. "And God forgive you, Gabriel, for what you've done to her." He swerved around on me. "For what I've done to her? What about what she's done to me? Hasn't it ever penetrated your smug mind, Norreys, that from the first moment I saw that girl, I suffered tortures? I can't explain to you what the mere sight of her did to me. I don't understand it now. It was like chilies and cayenne pepper rubbed into a raw wound. All the things I'd wanted and minded about all my life seemed to crystallize in her. I knew I was coarse, filthy, sensual, but I didn't mind about it till I saw her. She hurt me, Norreys. Don't you understand? She hurt me as nothing had ever hurt me before. I had to destroy her, to pull her down to my level. Don't you see? No, you don't. You don't understand anything. You're incapable of it. You curl yourself up in the window seat as though life were a book you were reading. I was in hell, I tell you. In hell. Once, just once, I thought I'd got a break, a loophole of escape, when that nice, silly little woman came bolting into the king's arms and jammed up the works. It meant that the election was dished, and I was dished. I'd have Millie Burt on my hands. That brute of a husband of hers would have divorced her, and I'd have done the decent thing and married her. Then I'd have been safe. Safe from this awful torturing obsession. And then Isabella herself, took a hand. She didn't know what she was doing to me. I'd got to go on. There was no escape. I hoped, all along, that I'd just pull through. I even bought her a wedding present. Well, it was no use. I couldn't stick it. I had to have her. And now, I said, she's dead. This time, he let me have the last word. He repeated, very softly, and now, she's dead. He turned on his heel and went out of the room. Chapter 26. That was the last time I saw John Gabriel. We parted in anger in Zagrade and did not meet again. With some difficulty, I made the arrangements which permitted Isabella's body to be brought home to England. She was buried in the small churchyard by the sea at St. Louis, where the other members of her family are buried. After the funeral, I went back with the 3 old ladies to the little Victorian house and was thanked by them for bringing Isabella home. They had aged terribly in the last 2 years. Lady St. Louis was more like an eagle than ever. Her flesh stretched tightly over her bones. She looked so frail that I thought she might die any moment. Actually, though, she lived for many years after that. Lady Tressilian was stouter and very asthmatic. She told me in a whisper that they all liked Rupert's wife very much. Such a practical girl and so bright. I'm sure they'll be happy. Of course, it isn't what we once dreamed of. The tears came into her eyes. She murmured, "Oh, why? Why did this have to happen?" It was an echo of what had never ceased to reiterate in my own brain. That wicked, wicked man, she went on. We were united, 3 old ladies and myself, in our sorrow for a dead girl and our hatred of John Gabriel. Mrs. Bigham Charteris was more leathery than ever. She said, as I finally bid them goodbye. Do you remember little Mrs. Burt? Yes, of course. What's happened to her? Mrs. Bigham Charteris shook her head. I'm sadly afraid she's going to make a fool of herself. You know what happened to Bert. No, I don't. Upset into a ditch one night when he'd had one over the 8, struck his head on a stone, killed him. So she's a widow? Yes. And I hear from my friends in Sussex that she's taken up with one of the farmers near there, going to marry him. Man has a bad reputation. Drinks, bit of a bully, too. So Millie Burt, I thought, was repeating her pattern. Did anyone ever profit by having a second chance? I wondered more than ever when I was on my way to London the following day. I had boarded the train at Penzance and taken a ticket for first lunch. As I sat there waiting for the soup to be served, I thought about Jennifer. I had had news of her from time to time from Caro Strangeways. Jennifer, Caro had told me, was very unhappy. She had complicated her life in an incredible fashion, but she was being very plucky over it. One couldn't, Caro said, help admiring her. I smiled a little to myself. Thinking of Jennifer, Jennifer was rather a darling. But I felt no urge to see her, no real interest. One doesn't care for hearing the same record too often. So I came at last to Teresa's house in London, and Teresa let me talk. She heard my bitter diatribes against John Gabriel. I described the happenings in Zagrady to her, and ended with the account of Isabella's grave in St. Lou. Then I was silent for a moment, hearing the noise of the Atlantic breakers against the rocks and seeing the outline of St. Lou Castle against the sky. I suppose I ought to feel that I've left her there in peace. But I don't. Teresa, I'm full of rebellion. She died before her time. She said to me once that she hoped she would live to be a very old woman. She could have lived to be old. She was very strong. I think that's what I find so unendurable, that her life was cut short. Teresa stirred a little against the background of a large painted screen. She said, "You're going by time, but time doesn't mean anything at all. 5 minutes and 1,000 years are equally significant." She quoted softly, "The moment of the rose and the moment of the yew tree are of equal duration. A dark red rose embroidered on faded gray silk." Teresa went on, "You will insist on making your own design for life, Hugh, and trying to fit other people into it, but they've got their own design. Everyone has got their own design. That's what makes life so confusing, because the designs are interlaced, superimposed. Just a few people are born clear-eyed enough to know their own design. I think Isabella was one of them. She was difficult to understand, for us to understand, not because she was complex, but because she was simple, almost terrifyingly simple. She recognized nothing but essentials. You persist in seeing Isabella's life as a thing cut short, twisted out of shape, broken off. But I have a strong suspicion that it was a thing complete in itself, the moment of the rose, if you like to call it that. She added softly, "You're very lucky, Hugh. Lucky." I stared at her. "Yes, because you loved her." "I suppose I did love her. And yet I never was able to do anything for her. I didn't even try to stop her going away with Gabriel." "No," said Teresa, "because you really loved her. You loved her enough to leave her alone." Almost unwillingly, I accepted Teresa's definition of love. Pity has always, perhaps, been my undoing. It has been my cherished indulgence by pity, the facile easy-going of pity. I have lived and warmed my heart, but Isabella, at least, I had kept free of pity. I had never tried to serve her, to make her path easy for her, to carry her burdens. In her short life, she was, completely and perfectly, herself. Pity is an emotion she neither needed, nor would have understood. As Teresa said, I had loved her enough to leave her alone. "Dear Hugh," said Teresa gently, "of course you loved her. And you've been very happy loving her." "Yet," I said, a little surprised, "yes, I've been very happy." Then anger swept over me. "But," I said, "I still hope that John Gabriel will suffer the tortures of the damned in this world and the next." "I don't know about the next," said Teresa, "but in this world I should say that you had got your wish. John Gabriel is the most unhappy man I have ever known. I suppose you're sorry for him, but I can tell you," Teresa interrupted. She said she wasn't exactly sorry for him. She said it went deeper than that. "I don't know what you mean. If you'd seen him in Zagrady, he did nothing but talk about himself. He wasn't even broken up by Isabella's death. You don't know. I don't suppose you even looked at him properly. You never do look at people." It struck me when she said that I had never really looked properly at Teresa. I have not even described her in this story. I looked at her, and it seemed to me that I was perhaps seeing her for the first time, seeing the high cheekbones and the upward sweep of black hair that seemed to need a mantilla and a big Spanish comb, seeing that her head was set on her neck very proudly, like her Castilian great-grandmother's. Looking at her, it seemed to me just for a moment that I saw exactly what Teresa must have been like as a young girl, eager, passionate, stepping adventurously forward into life. I did not know in the least what she had found there. "Why are you staring at me, Hugh?" I said slowly. "I was thinking that I had never looked at you properly." "No, I don't think you have." She smiled faintly. "Well, what do you see?" There was irony in her smile and laughter in her voice, and something in her eyes that I could not fathom. "You have been very good to me always, Teresa," I said slowly. "But I don't really know anything about you." "No, Hugh, you know nothing at all." She got up brusquely and pulled the curtain that was letting in too much sun. "As to John Gabriel," I began, Teresa said in her deep voice. "Leave him to God." "Hugh, that's an odd thing to say." "Teresa, no, I think it's the right thing to say. I've always thought so," she added. "One day, perhaps you'll know what I mean." Epilogue. Well, that is the story. The story of the man I first knew at St. Lou in Cornwall, and whom I had last seen in a hotel room at Zagrade. The man who was now dying in a back bedroom in Paris. "Listen, Norreys." His voice was weak but clear. "You've got to know what really happened in Zagrade. I didn't tell you at the time. I think I hadn't really taken in what it meant." He paused, gathering breath. "You know that she, Isabella, was afraid of dying. More afraid of it than anything else in the world." I nodded. Yes, I knew. I remembered the blind panic in her eyes when she had looked down at a dead bird on the terrace at St. Lou, and I remembered how she had leaped to avoid the car in Zagrade and the whiteness of her face. Then listen. Norreys, the student, came for me with the revolver. He was only a few feet away. He couldn't miss, and I was pinned behind the table. I couldn't move. Isabella saw what was going to happen. She flung herself in front of me as he pressed the trigger. Gabriel's voice rose. "Do you understand? Norreys, she knew what she was doing. She knew that it meant death. For her, she chose death to save me." Warmth came into his voice. I hadn't understood. Not until then. I didn't realize even then what it meant. Until I came to think about it, I'd never understood. You see, that she loved me. I was convinced that I held her by her senses. But Isabella loved me. She loved me so much that she gave her life for me, in spite of her fear of death. My mind moved backward. I was in the cafe in Zagrade. I saw the fanatical, hysterical young student, saw Isabella's sharp alarm, her realization, her momentary panic fear, and then her swift choice. I saw her fling herself forward, shielding John Gabriel with her body. "So that was the end," I said. But Gabriel pulled himself up on his pillows. His eyes, those eyes that had always been beautiful, opened very wide. His voice rang out loud and clear, a triumphant voice. "Oh no," he said. "That's where you are wrong. It wasn't the end. It was the beginning."